Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir. Sego. We'll begin our meeting with a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee peoples, the Mohawks of Akwesasne, the original keepers of this land. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Councillor Gardner, will you please lead us in the singing of our national anthem?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Justin Towndale.
Present.
Councillors Claude McIntosh.
Present.
Dean Hollingsworth.
Present.
Modeste Dupet.
Present.
Sarah Good.
Present.
Councillors Elaine McDonald.
Present.
Sid Gardner.
Ici.
Denis Sabourin.
Present.
Todd Bennett.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. No communication items. Okay, a motion to adopt the agenda as presented this evening, please. Councillor Dupel, Councillor Gardner, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. Any pecuniary interests? Okay, seeing none. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes from several meetings, January 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 29th, 30th, and 31st? Councillor Bennett, Councillor McDonald, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Presentations and delegations.
We have one presentation this evening, Mr. Mayor, and that is Massie Place update from Human Services, Melissa Morgan and Lisa Smith.
Ms. Morgan, Ms. Smith, I'd say welcome back to council, but you're always here, so whenever you're ready, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Lisa and I are very excited to be here this evening to share an update with you on Massie Place. Certainly, like Lisa and I very much enjoy these things, but clearly we're not architects. We dream big, but don't have the technical skills to get us through this. So that's why we hire consultants. So happy to bring an update to you this evening. On the next slide, we just wanted to bring Council's attention to some highlights from the original proposal at Massie Place. In June of 2023, Council approved the purchase of the former Vincent Massey School for initially some transition supportive housing, some other departmental and organizational ideas that we thought could be best fit for this facility. Originally, we were only going to get about 9 units in this facility, and we were looking at some exterior sleeping cabins as an option. We were looking to relocate Meals on Wheels from Glenstordon Lodge, and then in December of 2023, we hired architects, VG Architects and Axia Design, So we hired the experts who came in and took a look at this project and have dramatically changed it. And even as, you know, as recent as 2 weeks ago, plans have changed again. So we're always thinking what we can do for this space. So we'd like to present to you this evening what our draft final plans are for the space. So if we go to the next slide, please.
Okay, thank you and good evening, Council. So as Melissa already indicated, the beauty of working with architects is they can look at a space and really come up with a great vision of how to bring an idea into reality. So some of the changes that we are moving forward with is the current number of units in the building has increased from 9 one-bedroom units to 24 units. That will be a combination of what we're calling micro units, 1-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units. The micro units work well for singles. 1-bedrooms can work for a couple or even a single parent in a small family. And the 2-bedroom units are specifically designed to reach families within our community. The gym will no longer be utilized for additional office or programming space. So Meals on Wheels will no longer be relocated at this site. At the present time, no sleeping cabins will be installed on the site. The respite space, that is the former kindergarten space, if you're familiar with the Vincent Massey Public School layout, will be utilized as a resource space, which will include a multitude of uses for drop-in programs and supports for those who are looking for services and concerns around housing. Our Housing Rapid Response Team will be relocated and work out of this new space Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. And there's also going to be 2 office spaces in the facility available for other organizations and or community agencies to come in and provide services to tenants. Next slide, please. So this is just showing to you a draft rendering at this time of what this space potentially will look like when it's revitalized. So this is at the top, you'll see the front-facing facade coming off of Cumberland Street. So our key vision is, while it's still school, we're trying to make it look less institutional and have a very modern look and feel so that it is pleasant when it's in the community. The bottom rendering is actually showing what the south-facing side looks like when you're looking directly at it. Again, you can see we're really trying to utilize the history of the building with the red brick school, but also include some modern elements and designs. Next slide, please. So this is going to look small from where we're looking right now, but essentially this is the floor plan and the layout for the space. Again, I think it's really important to highlight at this time, this is not an emergency shelter facility. This is a residential facility. So folks will live in these apartments. It will be their home. They will have to sign an occupancy leasing agreement. And essentially it's their unit while they're with us so that we can help wrap around them, support them, and continue to support individuals to move into more permanent housing solutions. So at the top, you can see the layout for the micro unit. At the bottom, or the next one over, is the studio unit. So what you'll see with the micro units is those will be located in the gym. They will have common bathrooms and a common kitchen for that space, but all located inside the facility. What you'll also see is in the studio units, there actually is a small galley kitchen and a washroom. And then for the 2-bedroom family unit, again, 2 full bedrooms, a full bath, again, a large size galley kitchen, and actually a living room space as well. So again, the intention for those units are for families. So the rough breakdown is around 8 micro units, 13 studios, and 3 family units, which brings us to a grand total of 24 units. What you can see to almost the top right of the design, next to that 2-bedroom design, the open space that's being highlighted, that's going to be where the respite or resource center is going to be. Our staff will be located directly across the hallway. So our housing rapid resource or rapid response team are specialists in housing stability and support for tenants. It's going to have essentially 1.5 caseworkers and 2.5 social workers dedicated to working within the community and supporting directly the residents who live in this facility.
Next slide, please. So we do have an internal planning group that has been implemented to help facilitate many of the designs around this building, including safety, security, some of the concerns that we might be hearing from the community. So certainly, you know, Lisa and I and the CAO sit on this internal committee. We have Chief Spowert and Chief Lister, who are also on, and Chief Stevenson, who are also on our committee, to bring in some perspective from those areas. Our chief building official is on our committee. We had formerly Lindsay Parisian as from the planning department, so we've implemented instituted Jamie in her place. And so we also have an NGO representative, so Juliette Labrassiere from the United Way. We have also got some part of our internal planning group from exterior perspective, our Katie Wells, government relations, and Brad Budd, our operations coordinator, to help with some of the publicity and things like that. And we've also engaged with both school boards of the schools that are surrounding us, and have invited them to join their planning committee, and we do believe that there is interest in having them join our planning committee as well to help see the success of this program. So next slide, please.
Great. Okay, so just to wrap up our update to council is we are hosting a public information session on Thursday, February 22nd. That will take place from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. At Solombi in the Cornwall Civic Complex. So we are now at this point full for registrations, but we are still accepting those registrations because we're going to make arrangements for a virtual link similar to council, where residents in the community can view the information session should they not be able to attend. Following the information session, it is our intention to release an FAQ information package into the community, again, for anybody who can't make the session but still has questions, just to be very open with the information and make sure that folks can see how we're addressing concerns.
And certainly we have extended the invitation to the mayor and council to attend. I know we've received a couple of regrets, unfortunately, with continued support though. And certainly if council has any questions, we encourage you to come next Thursday as well and ask your questions at the public information session, so the public is aware of the interest that council has in this project as well.
Thank you. Mr. Zale?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to complete what Melissa and Lisa were saying, that, you know, we plan to obviously engage, participate, listen, and there'll be a number of takeaways that we assume from the 22nd, and we commit to coming back to council with those findings. So for members of council, you might not have all answered at that session on the 22nd, but we commit to doing a full review and debrief and coming back, so that kind of flow through a number of areas, right? Our proposal, the engagement with the public, and then from those engagement, how we're shaping the plan and how we're responding if there are specific concerns. So we just want to really own in on that measure, that it is a continued engagement with the community until, well, as we go towards opening, but also beyond that.
Okay, council, before I go to questions, can I just get a motion to receive, please? Councilor Dupel, Councilor Good. Questions, Councilor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm wondering if we can go back to the slide that showed the floor plan. Thank you. I'm curious to know, you said there'd be shared kitchen and shared washrooms in the micro units. So how many units would be sharing a washroom and a kitchen?
Do you know if we can just have you go to the other corner? Yeah. So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have 8 units in there. So 8 singles essentially would be, or sorry, 9 units, no 8, sorry, would be essentially sharing the bathroom and the kitchen in that area. So it'd be more like a dormitory style.
So 1 bathroom and 1 kitchen?
There are multiple, it's 1 bathroom area, but there are multiple.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to say, you started your report by saying that you were excited to be here. And I have to tell you, I was really excited too when I read the report and knew what was coming. And I'm tremendously relieved because so many people have expressed concerns about what they feared might happen. And I think the thing that alarmed people most were the sleeping cabins, because people anticipated that, as happens in shelters, people are basically evicted at 8 or 9 in the morning or whatever, with nowhere to go for the rest of the day. And I think people thought they'd have a whole lot of people just roaming around with nowhere to go. But what you've done is you've given us a plan here that shows that people will have a space of their own, and they won't be out on the sidewalk at 8 o'clock in the morning with the door locked behind them. I think that was the greatest fear that's been expressed to me, and quite a few people did express that. So I think this is pretty exciting. Well done. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a visitor here in this room tonight who would like to know if all the entrances and exits are wheelchair accessible.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly I would say all but one are accessible. The entire facility is accessible at ground level. It's just the far western entrance, which is not an entrance we're going to be highly encouraging. That has a set of stairs, but there are 3 other entrances that have ground level entry.
And the washrooms, same thing?
I don't know if we've gotten that far in the design yet, but certainly, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So actually, the units themselves are designed to be barrier-free with, especially in the larger family size bath, there will be turning radius, and even the galley kitchen design will hopefully work for folks, because our intention is to make these units available to anybody at the time they need them, right? So it needs to work for the broadest capture of the population.
Would you have some units that would have lower counters for people in wheelchairs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we've asked the architects to look into all of that, and I would say from our experience at 559th Street, we've had our own direct learning about what works best, and we will take that learning with us to this facility.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Good.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was really happy to see this report. I've also heard some concerns. Some of them had to do with the traffic that would be caused by Meals on Wheels and other kind of drop-in services. But it really looks like, I mean, this is maximizing space if I've ever seen it. So very, very impressive to see the 24 units. And I was counting the washrooms after that question had come up, and I see it looks like there's 3 down at the bottom here. I would believe that's the west side, near where the micro units are. And then it looks like, there's another 4 just beside the mechanical room that appear to be public. Maybe it's even 6, to be honest. So there's a lot of space there. I do have a question in terms of the drop-in. Is that still kind of to be determined, or do you have an idea what that looks like? Is that related to that housing rapid response team specifically, or is that broader?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think we've put that fine a point on it yet, because I think it's meant to be as many things as possible to help as many people as possible.
Great. And I think, what Councillor McDonald was talking about this sort of locking people out and it creating just a mass of people that have nowhere to go. This is housing. They will have their own lock and their own key to these units. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And while I understand that my comments at the last time you presented this regarding the lack of washrooms or a lack of plan around the washrooms for the micro units, I'm very, very pleased that this seems like abundantly addressed in this issue. And I am anticipating that this is going to be a very safe space for people. I also noticed that the office areas appear to be around where the main entrance is. Is that... I'm catching that right? So that's great. And is the intention that, will this building be monitored in terms of who's sort of allowed in and out, or has that been even really thought about?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're still working on that, and I think by next Thursday we'll have more answers to that question.
Wonderful. Okay, my last question is, if things go according to plan and there aren't any major hiccups, what's your best case scenario for when you think this can be constructed?
Too late. No. Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, best laid plans. We're at the mercy of other third party. So it has been delayed somewhat. Initially, we'd planned for the summer. It's looking like late fall of this year.
Which might not end up being a bad thing, though, the way, everything happens for a reason. Okay, this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, ladies. Just for the record, I wasn't a big fan of the whole cabin thing. No washroom option didn't strike me as necessarily the best idea. So on a personal note, while I'm no architect or engineer, I think that's probably a good thing. Couple of quick questions. On 41 on the map, so like, am I renting this apartment for indefinite, or like, how does it work? So I have my wife and my 2 kids, we need a place. Am I renting this 2-bedroom, or am I here for the day, here for the week? How does it work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what we're looking at is based on best practices in housing. Typically, folks in a facility like this might live there anywhere from a year to up to 4 years until they can get stabilized to move into potentially an apartment in a community housing facility. So they're renting. So there is a lease. They're in there, it's their apartment, and what's going to happen is we'll be bringing in the wraparound services and supports to help them be successful as they move forward.
Is that the same for these little dorm room style, just off where the old head office? I used to teach there, so where the
I used
head
to go to
office.
school there.
Yeah, So those little dorm rooms on the side, are they going to operate the same way then?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the intention with the micro units is they're smaller to allow someone who's single access to essentially a form of an apartment. They will have a lease and, again, could be in that space anywhere from a year to up to 4.
Right, so it's a fairly relatively permanent arrangement. This isn't like you're here for a couple weeks and then the next person moves in.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it may have been our CAO who said this, but even to Councillor Good's comment, this is housing. So
Right.
the intention is we're getting folks in, housed, stabilized, and then move them on to something permanent.
Now, that being said, have you considered the field there as, in terms of something a little longer term? We talk about affordable housing. Have you looked at potentially some kind of apartment type? Because there's a fairly decent chunk of property back there. Certainly, I don't know, proximity of apartment sizes and stuff like that, but
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have engaged a company, consultant to do our long-term development plan, and that portion of property will be a portion that they will look at site plan designs for us.
I think it's a logical fit in light of what we're doing here with the old school, but we'll wait and see what our consultants have to say, I guess.
There will be something there in the future, we just don't know what yet,
Sure.
till the consultants give us a good idea of what is our best option for that property.
Okay, thank you, ladies, thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Dupel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you for the presentation, and I too I was really excited when I read the report because I thought that it's such an improvement from what we had. I was not a fan of the first proposal, but certainly am a fan of this one. I think that hearing that there's an invitation to the school boards really makes me happy, because I think that those elected officials do the same as we do and represent the people and the residents of Cornwall. So I think that, it sends a strong message, and I'm really proud of that. I just wanted to talk about Meals on Wheels, which is a really, valued service in our community. And I was like a little concerned at the beginning with the flow of traffic, adding that much traffic to a school district. And let's be honest, I'm sure we all received concerns from residents that, we're transplanting this initiative, which was a great initiative, into a residential setting and a setting that hosts 2 schools, a retirement home currently, which will be moving, and long-term care. But so it sort of raised, eyebrows for people, and I know that administration put their best foot forward, and I appreciate that so much. In terms of the actual building, will there be any kind of, I know that our housing buildings, and when I hear Ms. Smith say that this is housing, I'm really excited about that, because I think we offer really good housing projects in our community. But through you, Mr. Mayor, will there be any kind of, currently our housing units have security tenants, or a live-on superintendent kind of thing. Is that being considered for this unit?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's probably something that we'll be able to answer more next Thursday. But certainly, Chief Spoward is on our internal committee, and we are having those internal conversations already on what that could look like. Again, this is housing. We would, want to consider this like we do our other housing units and not stigmatize this as anything other than a
Right.
housing unit we maintain.
Okay. And the other thing is like cleaning of the public areas, like since our current housing units don't have, say the units, the studio units and that, will that be given some extra consideration in the planning stages?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it'll operate just like our housing facilities do now. So this property will go into our portfolio of community housing. There will be maintenance staff that will keep the units maintained, operational. Cleaning of the public spaces, again, will be connected to that team. As well, to your comment of around building attendance. So again, this will be managed by one of our property management staff as well. So it operates essentially the same. Cleaning in the units, again, that's part of what we'd want to help tenants to be able to move towards so that they are ready for permanent housing. So our social work team will be working with folks to be able to look after and maintain their own units.
Well, with our housing shortage and crisis within our community and transplanting an initiative such as this into a residential area that houses schools, I think it's a really happy medium, and I think that our community at whole will benefit from this. So thank you very much for your presentation, and I look forward to this initiative moving forward.
Councillor Goodjoe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank you for your presentation, since this topic is one of the higher topic that we have in the community. But I would like your guidance about some question. Not in the presentation, but in page 36 of the agenda, I can read on financial implications due to the additional units that can be created at Massie Place. It is estimated that this project will be required an additional 2 to 5 million. Is it right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, with the addition of going from almost tripling the number of units, the cost will go up. That tender will eventually come to council for approval. I can say that Lisa and I have applied to the ministry for additional funding for this project. We're just waiting to hear back whether we've been successful in that application.
Okay. So it's gonna be, this money is gonna come from the corporation, or you're gonna apply through funding programs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've already designated some funding to offset the cost of this. Originally, the funding we had set aside was going to primarily cover the cost of the renovations. And of course, again, now that we're tripling the number of units almost, the costs have gone up, and there will be the potential, if we don't receive additional funding from the province, that we will have to borrow that money, and that will come from a subsidy on our budget to maintain that going forward.
Thank you very much. To you, Mr. Mayor. At item 3 on the third slide on the presentation, it is stated that at the present time, no sleeping cabins will be installed in that space. I'm very much against the installation of cabins so close to school zone, with many schools around and many children. So I see a great risk having cabins there close to schools. And I would like to remove these if it is possible. So I'm going to ask, do I need a motion tonight to remove this part, or it can be discussed further?
I will turn that over to the CAO to.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the reference point here is really relating to the evolution of the work for the site, and there's no action. We're just there was a initial reflections in belief of the attribution of the space where we would require and call them cabins, call them tiny homes. There was initial considerations for that. We're not proposing that, so that's what we're reflecting there. There's no direction to advance, and frankly, as our first project that's in front of you is what's presented in that site plan. If ever there were or when there would be housing investments on the site, as per another councillor's question, I believe it was Councillor Hollingsworth, we would come back through the same process to council with community engagement and so on. So I just want to, I believe the point here just simply reflects the evolution of the considerations for the site.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Morgan, is that fair?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answer on your presentation.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking at the Housing Rapid Response Team working Monday to Friday, 3 to 4:30. Is there any talk or discussion about having Saturday, Sunday coverage? Because we don't just get homeless between Monday, Friday, and 3:30 to 4:30.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is conversations Lisa and I have had. Currently, we do have arrangements with some community organizations that assist us after hours and on the weekends. We've had that discussion as well because everybody is tight for resources. Certainly, we have a collective agreement that we would have to entertain if we were to bring those services in-house, but we're not at that point right now. We would like to get this project up and running and see what type of resources we would need in the future.
Thank you. The other question is, and I think the CEO touched on it, but I didn't catch any timelines. After the Thursday information session, and we compile all the report, how soon do we expect to see that at council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it will depend on the large number of questions we may get next Thursday. Certainly, individuals have registered online with their questions, so we will be preparing that in our slide presentation. And then any questions coming off the floor, we will record with the answers, and giving us some time to accumulate that, we will endeavor to get it to council as quick as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments from council? Councillor Gardner.
Just a quick question that Councillor Hollingsworth brought up. That's a huge piece of property, and there's an organization in the city who would be probably happy to make a common garden in there. You're going to have people living there, you've got lots of room. It might be a good idea to think about that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly those are things we've also entertained. We've also been speaking with our school neighbors to either side of us as to whether or not we could also engage students to help through various co-ops and things like that. So it's not outside the realm of looking for other organizations to come in and assist with some of those things. And community gardens is one of the things that we've already addressed as a possibility for some of that space.
I'm glad to hear that because I have a fairly large garden, and during the summer when I'll reap some tomatoes, cucumbers, all kinds of vegetables, and oftentimes maybe twice a week I'll bring a couple of bags to Agape. And so a common garden would also include bringing food to Agape or 105. Thanks for the answer.
Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. I think the button item here were the cabins. I think all the 2 or 3 calls I got were about the cabins. So I think by removing the cabins from the equation, I think you've taken a lot of heat off on this project. I was surprised to hear you say 3 to 4 years people could stay there. I thought it'd be a short term, much shorter term. My question would be, where do people come from that are going there? Now, I know you have your list of people, and it's a long list of people seeking affordable housing. They wouldn't come off that list. This is a more urgent situation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe we've spoken to council about our by names list initiative, which registers and helps us to identify people who are homeless within the community. When you look at that list, the majority of people are from Cornwall and SDNG. So they're coming from our home community. The face of homelessness has dramatically changed even before COVID and after COVID. And with affordability being such a pressing issue, you see more and more individuals and families tipping into homelessness who might have been hanging on before this came up. So it's our neighbors, it's our family, it's our friends. Those are the folks we would be housing in here.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I used this before. I was going down Tollgate one day, and a school bus stopped in front of me, in front of a motel, and these two little guys get off. And out of curiosity, I watched, and they went to the motel door, knocked on, and a woman opened, let them in. I thought, they must be living in the motel. Would those be the kind of people you'd take in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, folks like that, folks who maybe also are in hidden homelessness, so maybe couch surfing, living with friends, kind of hopping place to place, week to week, very unstable in their housing.
Is this model taken from somebody else? Do we know that, I imagine we're not cutting new territory here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So originally, the original model we had gone to Belleville to see, Peterborough, to see their model and what they were doing. And we've also engaged with other service managers to see what their models were like. So the original model came from another service manager, but again, having engaged with the architects, this is something that it's not unheard of for municipalities to buy former schools or other buildings to be able to repurpose for housing. It is a very common practice across the province.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Okay. Thank you again for your presentation. Again, a reminder to everyone that on the 22nd, there'll be an open house with more information at the Civic Complex. Sounds like it's full, but virtually should be good. Unfortunately, I won't be there. I'll be in Toronto for Good Roads board meeting. I've recorded a message to kick off the event, but I encourage council and members of the public who are able to attend or tune in to do so. Look forward to a constructive conversation and alleviate some of the fears. I too have received some comments. A lot of the concerns I find are justified, but there is a little bit of NIMBYism that slipped in the conversation as well, unfortunately. So I hope we can dispel that and move forward because this is a very important project for our community. Thank you. Motion to receive, or sorry, not motion, all in favor of receiving? Carried, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Gibbon?
apologies for my tardiness. I do want to declare conflict of interest, and I missed that section.
Okay.
For resolution number 1, the review of the MOU.
Okay, so noted, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Bulk consent reports. The first one is recommending that council receive the statement of expenses for elected officials for the period of October 1st to December 31st, 2023. And the second is recommended that council receive the third and fourth quarters non-competitive procurement report for the period ending December 31st, 2023. RFP, terms of reference 24P03, specialized transit on-demand scheduling software, with a recommendation that council receive this report.
Motions? Councilor McDonald, are you moving it? Okay, 1 second, I need a seconder. Councilor Sabri seconded. You had a question, Councilor McDonald?
I think there's an error that I noticed too late to phone the clerk about earlier, but there's a small expense, $109 attributed to me, but that should go to the city for the frames, for the Hall of Fame certificates that you signed. The administrative assistant had ordered them from Grandin Toy. They weren't coming, and we had no time to waste, so she managed to get your name on the certificates, and I went shopping for frames. And so that when I brought the bill in, I see she attributed it to me, but it should have gone to the city because the certificates came from the city, along with the ones from the MP and the MPP.
So, thank you, Councillor.
Yeah.
We'll look into it and have it switched.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of receiving? Carried, thank you.
Reports from inquiries, Multisport Outdoor Recreation Facility, with a recommendation that council receive this report.
Councilor Hollingsworth?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to make the motion for council to keep track of what I'm actually going to say is on page 74 of the paper agenda. Basically, a motion would read, The staff recommends that consulting firm be retained to further develop conceptual designs to produce a more refined project budget for council consideration. If I can get a seconder for that.
Counselor Good. So, Counselor Hollingsworth?
Yeah. Turn the thing off for a change. Typically, when we support a motion to receive, what we're essentially saying as a council is, thank you for writing that report. That's very nice information, and let's leave it on a shelf somewhere, and we'll get back to it someday. And what often happens is it sits on the shelf, and 5 years from now, we dust it off, and whatever was said in the report is kind of not relevant maybe. The city has evolved, the numbers are different. And so then we say, okay, go write another report basically to fix the things that have become irrelevant. I don't want to see this particular initiative sit on a shelf. Having talked to some of the recreation organizations that were named in this report, they're ready to start doing fundraising now. Now, for those of you who've sat through any of these types of projects, you will know that when you have an organization or a group of people who are ready to go out and raise their own money, you kind of need to strike when the proverbial iron is hot. The other thing to keep in mind is that these types of things don't happen in 1 week or a month or 6 months. This is probably realistic about a 4 to 5. If we said let's keep going today, we're probably looking at about 4 to 5 years, give or take. And the last point I want to make, Your Worship, is that there some people who are perhaps not champions of this will say, well, this is a sports initiative and we already have way too many sports in Cornwall, and let's not waste time with that, let's do something else. But the truth of the matter is, the longer we lollygag on this, the longer we procrastinate on this, the longer the Bob Turner Center sits with nothing happening in it except football. Now, no disrespect to the football community. Kirby's an awesome guy. He's championing the cause, but I think that property is being underutilized currently the way it is. So I want to see it be utilized properly, whether it's affordable housing or a park for our youth or the other things that have been kicked forward. Nothing moves along until we determine what we want to do with the whole football field / recreation facility. So while yes, it is a sports kind of initiative, other projects are kind of, or other potential projects are sitting waiting for us to decide what we're doing here. So I want to move forward with this. I think a number of the community sports organizations have really got behind it. And I kind of feel when you get some momentum rolling on these types of things, you have to capitalize. Otherwise, it's like the library that took 27 years, the Benson Center that took 34 years, the Arts Center, as I'm sure the arts people will say, something like, 26, 20, 30 years, give or take. And so while I'm not privy to all the numbers, I know that these projects take forever, and if you don't act on them, the opportunity slides by and it's another 3 councils before it comes again. So I'm hoping I can get my colleagues to support the idea of moving forward with this. Consultant is kind of almost a given. I know it's money that's being spent, but it's the cost of doing business, if you will. So with a little luck, we can get going forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The clerk's asked that you repeat your motion. If you have a piece of paper and want to write it down and present it to the clerk, that might be helpful as well.
Is that a piece of gum?
Yeah. Ms. Morgan, you wanted to provide some commentary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if I can perhaps just comment on something Councillor Hollingsworth has said. If Council will remember when the report came regarding the 504 4th Street property owned by the city and what the use for that would be in the future, that Council tabled that until we could prepare our long-term development plan. We have hired that consultant, and we hope to bring a comprehensive report back to both city and county councils late May to be able to advise whether or not that is a space that we may need for affordable housing, and if so, how we could best utilize that space. So just wanted to provide that bit of an update towards Councillor Hollingsworth's comments.
Thank you. Further commentary, Councillor Good?
Thank you so much. I seconded this motion because I think there's merit to it. I have a question for Mr. Fothrop, because I'm sure you've dealt with many consultants in the past. Do you have an estimate for how much we would need to set aside for this type of project to hire on a consultant to design?
Mr. Fothrop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say typically, depending on the scope of the work, we typically budget around 10% of the overall value for a consultant. But however, that does include, the design work as well as some of the contract administration components. So depending, I think, from what Councillor Hollingsworth's motion is suggesting, is we advance to the next stage, which is basically have a consultant develop a concept plan that will have a more refined budget than the high-level budget that's included in that report. So that it would certainly be less than 10% for that element. But overall, typically the consultant fees are in the neighborhood of about 10% of an overall value.
If this project is estimated at 3.5 million, we're talking 350,000 on the high end.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the 3.5 million is the estimate for the just the turf field component as well. There are a number of other items within the report that the sports associations are looking for.
Okay, my apologies. I had not done a tally for that previously. It brings us to around 7.6? Oh, gosh. 7.6. So, okay. So we're talking a reasonable amount. I'm willing to entertain this, even though we just passed our budget, and it makes me a little bit nervous. More or less because I do think that there's value in keeping up the momentum here. When this first came to council and, we heard from the public about their thoughts about that property where the Bob Turner previously was located. I reached out to the president of the Wildcats, Kirby Camplin, and we had a really candid conversation. Now, of course, there's some sentimental attachment to the turf, but I didn't get the sense from him that there was a real strong opposition to moving it to another field. And we know that some of the other sports leagues are very attached to their location, baseball being one of them, and it's nice to keep them where they are, especially when they're happy there, but they know that there's faults, they know there's issue with the lights, they know that the field has maintenance issues, and a number of the issues that were listed in the report that we had received originally. I don't know, based on the consultant that we've already hired to assess all of housing in Cornwall SDG, I don't know what will come back from that, and so maybe it's worth deferring it until we receive that report. However, I want to keep it on the table, and I don't just want to receive this report, close it, and not look at it for, another term of council. So I'd like to hear from administration to hear, is this the wrong direction to take, or is this going to move the ball forward, and is it good to catch this momentum while we've already got some of the sports clubs who are willing to fundraise?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this would be the next logical step, would be to retain a consultant, further refine the conceptual design. I think as well we would look to get some direction from council regarding if we're going to advance or retain a consultant. I think we need to select a location for them to work with.
I like logical next steps. Thank you. That's great. I think the preliminary designs are very nice. They fit well on the property and the considerations that have been listed in the report about some of the emerging sports. I know what was listed on here, not pickleball, goodness gracious, cricket. But there's some other considerations that were listed on here that I think is worthwhile. So I'm willing to support this because I do think it's important we move the ball forward and proceed with the next logical step as was stated.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it seems to me that since at least one of the teams is obviously going to be affected by the report that's going to come out in May, I believe Ms. Morgan said. It would make sense, I think, for us to hire a consultant for this project, maybe June, but not sooner, because the decision they could recommend could well be impacted by the study already being done. But I don't mean to delay this in any way, and I think we should give the green light, have the sports team start fundraising now. They don't need a motion from council to start raising money. But if they raise money, it will put pressure on council. So I suggest they start. But as far as us hiring a consultant, let's wait till after we get the report on 504 Fourth, possibly.
Ms. Morgan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly, I didn't mean for my comments earlier to deter from the current conversation that's occurring. Mr. Fothrop and I have engaged very well together in terms of looking at what's in the Recreation Master Plan and aligning our conversations and our planning together. And although there may be a need for that space in the future for affordable housing, nothing will occur there until after there is a decision made on what's currently existing there and at what point in time it could be relocated. So I certainly wouldn't want what we're doing in housing to hold up anything that's going on in recreation.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Gardner next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't always agree with Councillor Hollingsworth, but in this case I do. I think what's happened in the past, and I'll recall the aquatic center. We put together a group at the time and raised $1.2 million in the community, and we're able to go to the federal government and the provincial government and say, we've raised this money, we're serious, we want the aquatic center to be put together. Because also the YMCA roof was leaking and it smelled like heck in there, and I used to bring my son in there to swim, and I was so worried about him damaging his lungs in the air that was in there. On top of that, the curling club, which again was an old building which is being torn down now, came to us and said, can we piggyback with you guys on the aquatic center? And we said yes. And so they raised some money. And so both those projects were done because we took the initiative and raised money to be able to get these buildings done, which were needed. And I think I agree with Councillor Hollingsworth. If people in the city want to start raising money for a multi-sports group, I totally agree with you, Dean.
Further Councillor Gunjo.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make sure about what we're discussing now. Please, can I?
Would you like the motion read, Councillor?
Yes, please.
Madam Clerk,
I
please.
have a nice little paper here with the motion.
We can't put it on the screen.
No. The motion is that a consultant firm be retained to further develop conceptual designs and produce a more refined project budget for council consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Clerk. I support these for sure. But I would like to, and first I would like to thank Councillor Hollingsworth to raise this matter that we have in our community. Having an athletic facility like that, it's something very good, and it's going to be promoting health in Cornwall. But concerning the kind of project that we're discussing here, it's an outdoor, to make sure, because I went through the report, and it's an outdoor facility. And I think we have a lack of indoor facility in Cornwall. So I don't know how we can manage or add these to this project, because we have no place for other sports like basketball, volleyball, and all those sports. So how, and I don't know to whom I'm going to address this question, is there any possibility to add an indoor facility to what is proposed here.
Mr. CEO?
So, Councillor, we're in a bit of a, we're certainly not trying to be obstructive, but the report that's in front of you stems from a motion that council approved. So, Jamie and Lori wrote the report that's in front of you based on your own direction to us. So, I don't know. Obviously, in our Parks Recreation Master Plan, we've identified the shortfalls relating to gymnasium facility. Absolutely, but I don't know how we can accommodate. As you can see by what's presented, the engagement was relating to an outdoor facility, and it relates in this case to one site. The consideration for other sports, other outdoor uses, indoor uses aren't maybe not accommodated for this location. So if you were to move a motion and provide a direction, we're glad to conduct a review and come back relating to a gymnasium. I just don't know how it factors into this review, to be frank. I don't know, Jamie, if you have anything to add, but
through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say add that, yes, our recreation master plan does identify the need for a gymnasium. We do have a concept drawing. A number of years ago, a group did come and propose, in addition to the Benson Center, as being a suitable location. So the concept drawing that is located on page 69 of the agenda package shows a conceptual layout that includes some the artificial turf field, as well as some natural soccer fields, but as well identifies a footprint for a future gymnasium to be added to the Benson Center at some point in the future. However, I would say the only thing I would add is that some of the estimates that we've included in here are as CEO Fleury mentions, are limited to the field use and the artificial turf.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So please tell me if I'm wrong, can I consider that this is a first step, and then we can add a gymnasium because if I understand, we have room. Can I consider this possible?
I think what Mr. Faltrop was sharing with you, Councillor, is that we reviewed this, and the review that's in front of you relates to outdoor multi-use space. Mr. Faltrop's additional response reflects that we have other considerations, but have not been part of this review, but remain priority within the Parks and Rec Master Plan. Maybe in simple terms, you gave us a motion to go and review the outdoor multi-use field. There is a review that was conducted, and that's the report that's in front of you. The report that's in front of you has no recommendation other than receiving. We have the motion that Councillor has brought forward. So if in doing so, if the motion were to pass, we wouldn't make a move that would compromise the Parks and Rec Master Plan, or that would enable the gymnasium, but it doesn't advance the gymnasium at the Benson as per the Recreation Master Plan idea. So they're not in opposition, but one does proceed, and if that one chooses by council's direction does proceed, it doesn't mean that the gymnasium wouldn't be able to, but they're not on the same track right now based on motions that council have been bringing forward and the report that's in front of you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sabri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supportive of the motion, and I'm somewhat reminded that who'd ever thought that playtime would be so expensive. But for all intents and purposes, when you look at all the information that we have and the master plan, it's almost as if $750,000 being put out for a consultant study is basically going to either lay out a whole new second phase of a master plan for us, which could very well conceptualize outdoor facilities at the Benson Center or the Bob Turner Center, either or possibly inclusive of both and that. And I'm wondering if maybe Councillor Hollingsworth wants to actually define the direction as to where this should be looked at, because I do see a whole host of problems. If you're going to try to address everyone's desire and everyone's need, you have space problems at the Benson Center. You have similar issues at the Bob Turner Center. But at the same time, I am also one that doesn't believe that we should put all of our sports facilities in one location or one venue, that we should spread it around the city here. And I think this could very well also be part of a message from a consultant, depending as to what direction we offer here.
Mr. CEO?
Councillor, I just want to clarify the if you look at the motion that was reviewed, and if you look at the report, it's specific. The option that's proposed is the Benson. So I don't disagree with the idea of what you're describing. I just want to be clear in terms of if Councillor were to pass Councillor Hollingsworth's motion under its current form, we would look to hire a consultant that reviews the space at the Benson as per the report. And I'll ask Mr. Faltrop just to add if I'm missing anything.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think if we were to put out a procurement document to retain a consultant, we would need to define the scope of work that they're going to do. You know, if they're going to do design work at one location or another, there are differences there. I think we would have to select a location and to be able to task them with this next step. If we were looking at for instance, some of the amenities located at the Benson Center that already exist would not need to be redesigned, as opposed to if you select a different site that doesn't have the washrooms and suitable parking areas. In order for them to give pricing or costing for that design work, we would need to pick a site and so that they know what they're dealing with. Yeah.
And Councillor McIntosh?
Yeah, when the Benson Center was built, the whole idea was going to be the hub for multi-sport. So this isn't breaking new ground. I remember when they built the Benson Center, the whole idea, it was designed so we'd have soccer fields, football fields. We purchased the property on the west side, and we purchased property on the east side, all with that idea that someday this is going to be a multi-sport center. And I have no problem with multi-sport center. If you've ever been to Brantford, take a look at the Gretzky Center. Everything's there, everything. And I think that's when we went with the Benson Center. The idea was that this was going to be the start of a multi-sport center. So to look at the athletic grounds at this point, I wouldn't be in favor of that. Parking would be a major issue, major issues. It always has been for when it came to the athletic grounds. So I agree with Dean's motion that you know, we've been kicking around now since the Ben Center was built. I think there were even outdoor doors were built, so the idea the football and the soccer guys could come and go and use their dressing rooms. So I think it's time maybe to move on with it. And the gymnasium idea originally started out, it was going to be built behind the civic complex, and then that went down the tubes. And the group came to us at the Benson Center, and that died very quickly. And I think there's a problem too with the infrastructures under the ground. To add on to the Benson Center would be a major, be a pretty big project. So anyway, I'm ready to move on with it. Dean's right, saying it's been, Benson Center's been there how many years? We haven't moved. All we did was buy the land. So let's really take a hard look at it.
Further questions or comments? You're looking to wrap up, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Good, before.
I just wanted to ask something because I noticed that the second bullet says clubhouse construction or building expansion, and I recognize this is going to be for more than one sports club. I'm just thinking, of course, at the athletic grounds where they have the 3 portables, so to speak. Would that be to replace what they're currently using? And would that potentially be a plausible interim solution to some of those needs that would not cost $1.5 million?
Councillor, I'll turn it over to Mr. Faltrop in a second, but you are raising an important point, which I want to bring council's attention to.
Yeah.
The analysis was done. Out of 23 engagements, we received 8 feedback. Of that 8 feedback, we're not posing, like, you name cricket, you're naming some elements. We just listed them. So I just want to be extremely cautious around, I think, to Jamie's earlier point, if Councillor Hollingsworth's motion were to pass, it relates to a site. The element through that process, that'd be through the consultants or the engagement with the public, could further define. I think the core of the translation between a turf field and its multi-use potential is certainly, I think, captured by Lori and Jamie. But I just want to be cautious because we're getting down the listing. The listing is really what they provided as their response to us, not us doing a prioritization of those elements or financial feasibility of those elements. And there might be some benefits to other sports. There might be some conflict with other sports with any or all of these decisions that would form, I assume, the next steps of consultants review if Councillor Hollingsworth's motion were to pass. I'm sorry, I sort of intervene on the response. I'll turn over to Mr. Faltrop for a clearer response on your question.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the portable units you're referring to at Joe St. Denis Field were done a number of years ago and were intended to be temporary until a more permanent facility, either at that location or at or at a different location, were to be established. I think it would be our recommendation to, as per Mr. Fleury's comments, a number of sports groups did identify a need for storage, and we are maxed out within the Benson Center. And so part of the scope of what would be required here would be to establish some storage in some manner or another, whether that's a building addition or a standalone clubhouse or building in which some of the user groups could lease. But that's currently right now, one of those portables that is at Joe St. Denis Field is leased by the Minor Football Association, and so to store their equipment for that exact purpose.
Now, I imagine, assuming we move forward with this, that the consultant would come back with some recommendations and some options for probably different elements of what's kind of been mentioned and or proposed here. And I would imagine they would also do a consultation with the remaining minor sports leagues.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's what we would task them to do.
Thank you. I am also interested eventually to hear about the gym. I do think it's worthwhile pursuing, but I imagine it's going to be incredibly costly. So thank you.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at the conceptual design that's part of the report with the football field and all the other fields. I'm just wondering, the green space that's the southeast, all that green space, how much of that do we own? I think we purchased a right of way to go all the way through to 2nd Street, but how much of it do we own, or is it all owned by somebody else?
Mr. Faltrop.
Currently, we do not own any of that parcel. It's privately held. We do have an easement over it, which is where Angelo Labano Lane is located. But that is an easement until that parcel were to be either developed with a road corridor going through it, was the intention, I think, when the Benson Center was constructed.
I'm trying to remember, and I have a terrible memory, so bear with me. That roadway that goes kind of behind the old Brookdale Mall and between the old Brookdale Mall and the Big Ben, wasn't there not a right-of-way we purchased all the way through to 2nd Street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that was an old spur line, actually, that we purchased.
Okay.
And so that happens to be on the sketch you're looking at, just on the east side of our parking lot and east side of that green block of land
up here.
there. Yeah, just outside the picture.
Okay, thanks. I'm asking the question because I'm thinking about parking. If we had all these things, the parking we have is not adequate. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Councillor Gardner.
I just want to add a little bit to this soup and stir the pot a little bit. Prior to doing this, Mayor Bernadette Clement, seconded by me, looked to put a basketball building attached to the aquatic center. The reason that was going to be done, if it passed, was it would allow basketball players a place to play, and it would also stop the restriction of swimmers coming to our aquatic center, because there's so many people that can be there, and I don't remember how many, it's 450, and we can't enlarge our swim meets. So that gymnasium would have allowed us to actually bring in more swim teams to and have more swim meets in Cornwall. So putting that little bit in the soup, that was an ideal situation at the time, and I hope that we look at that too, because that building was built so that we could add a gymnasium to it.
Thank you. Any final comments? Okay, I'll just make a couple quick ones. I'm going to vote in favor of this. I think part of it is keeping momentum up, but getting options on the table. I would like to see some better feedback from the organizations that we reached out to. I think it's unfortunate we reached out to 23 and only got 8 responses. So I don't know if that entails following up, but I think, it'd be important to get their voices at the table as well. If they're willing, if they don't want to engage, that's fine, right? They have that choice, but I'm wondering if a follow-up is a good way to move forward in this to ensure that we hear from them. I too had a conversation with Kirby Kaplan. He seems to be our go-to for some of this stuff, but mostly because of the turf field. What piqued my attention was the ability to host football events. The Wildcats are currently unable to do that because they require a turf field, which is interesting because I heard that grass was making a comeback. But it sounds like we're restricting some of the sports organizations in our community and the ability to host events, which generates revenue, tourism. You can go down that chain. He did indicate to me that football, soccer, some other groups are ready and willing to fundraise, which is a good sign. And as Councillor McDonald said, nothing stops them from starting. But I think, this is a good step in saying we're putting our faith into moving forward in this way. So I think that's promising. I also, during preliminary discussions with the Mall Council of Akwesasne, I know they're looking at building a multi-purpose recreation facility of some type. Location TBD. I don't want to speak out of turn or for them, but I think they even mentioned looking in Cornwall as well, potentially. Now, I could be wrong on that, but if that is the case, there may be opportunities to partner there. So I think that's something we need to consider. Councillor Hollingsworth, you want to wrap up?
Thank you, Worship. Sometimes less is more, so I'm going to just not say anything. Thank you.
That's the best wrap up I've heard. Do we need the motion read so we're clear on what we're voting on, or is everyone clear? Sounds like everyone's clear. All in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can you please remind me who the seconder was?
Councillor Good was seconder.
Thank you. Our next report is Bilingual Services, and if you'll allow me to change roles, Mr. Mayor, I will go to the presenters table to present the report.
Whenever you're ready, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So following Mayor Justin Towndale's direction at the regular meeting of Council of September 25th last year, we obtained a picture in time of the current services being offered to the francophone community across the corporation. Suivant les directives du maire Justin Towndale lors de la réunion du Conseil du 25 septembre, nous avons obtenu une image des services maintenant offerts à la communauté francophone de la ville de Cornwall. So please keep in mind that through this review, we included 3 levels of French, and they were provided with our survey as descriptions, and all 3 levels will be considered as rendering our employees and residents bilingual. So the beginner level, the intermediate level, and the advanced level. 3 niveaux de français ont été fournis avec notre enquête en tant que description et les 3 niveaux seront considérés comme rendant nos employés et résidents complètement bilingues. Niveau débutant, niveau intermédiaire et niveau avancé. So we discovered from the 397 front-facing positions, a total of 250 people can offer services in the French language. That is the equivalent of 62.97% of our workforce. Nous avons découvert qu'à partir de 397 postes faisant face au front, 250 peuvent offrir des services en français, soit de 62,97%. From the 925.5 positions, a total of 427 can offer services in the French language. That's an equivalent of 46.14%. Parmi les 925.5 postes, 427 peuvent offrir des services en français, soit 46,14%. Corporate Policy HR 0303, Bilingual Services, Languages of Service to the Public, was reviewed and revised in June of 2008 and provides for key services in both English and French languages. So on the evaluation of this policy, resulted as follows. Municipal publications are being issued in both official languages as well as municipal tax, water, and sewer bills, and election information. Les publications municipales sont publiées dans les 2 langues officielles ainsi que les factures de taxes municipales, d'eau et d'égout, et des renseignements sur les élections. While we believe that many communication items received in French are responded to in French, it's kind of hard to monitor that aspect. Nombreux éléments de communication reçus en français sont normalement traités en français. Permanent public signs and identification related to municipal services and infrastructure, as well as signs relating to public safety, are being produced in both official languages. Les panneaux et les identifications publiques permanents liés aux services et aux infrastructures municipales, ainsi que les panneaux relatifs à la sécurité publique, sont produits dans les 2 langues officielles du Canada. The Department of Human Services continues to provide services in both official language in accordance with the French Languages Services Act of Ontario. Le département des services humains continue d'offrir des services dans les 2 langues officielles conformément à la loi sur les services en français de l'Ontario. And a total of 19 positions are designated as bilingual. Au total, 19 postes sont désignés bilingues. The next steps to be implemented are the following. Revise the bilingual policy and include governance best practices, including providing council agendas, minutes, and reports in both official languages. While the city currently strives to ensure residents receive French services, if requested, it will pivot into a model where service in French is actively being offered, changing the responsibility of that service from the residents to the city staff. We will communicate the requirements of the bilingual policy to all employees, including our obligation to provide our publications, website, direct communications, and signage in both official languages, and to fill vacancy with bilingual staff if possible. We will offer French-speaking classes to employees. We will engage the Francophone community stakeholders to discuss the results of this review and obtain feedback and expectations from the Francophone community living in Cornwall about City of Cornwall services. We will conduct a review of designated positions within the organization and update the designated position by the end of 2024. We will ensure that the areas of human resources and economic development recruit bilingual staff when vacancies occur, since these organizations deal with and try to attract new residents to the area. Leading by example, the CAO will ensure communications to all employees are bilingual. Les prochaines étapes à mettre en œuvre sont les suivantes. Réviser la politique sur le bilinguisme et y inclure les pratiques exemplaires en matière de gouvernance, y compris la présentation des ordres du jour, des procès-verbaux et des rapports du Conseil dans les 2 langues officielles. Bien que la Ville de Cornwall s'efforce à s'assurer que les résidents reçoivent des services en français, si on lui en fait la demande, on adoptera un modèle de service où le français est activement offert, changeant la responsabilité des services des résidents au personnel de la Ville. Communiquer les exigences de la politique bilingue à tous les employés, y compris notre obligation de fournir nos publications, notre site Web, nos communications directes et nos affiches dans les 2 langues officielles et de pouvoir les postes vacants avec du personnel bilingue, si possible. Offrir des cours en français aux employés. Mobiliser les intervenants de la communauté francophone pour discuter des résultats de cet examen et obtenir des commentaires et des attentes de la communauté francophone vivant à Cornwall au sujet des services de la Ville de Cornwall. Veiller à ce que les secteurs de ressources humaines et développement économique recrutent du personnel bilingue lorsque des postes sont vacants, car ces 2 secteurs traitent et tentent d'attirer de nouveaux résidents à la région. En donnant l'exemple, le chef de l'administration veillera à ce que les communications avec tous les employés soient bilingues. By implementing these changes, the City of Cornwall will be in a position to voluntarily increase its level of bilingual services. En mettant en œuvre ces changements, la Ville de Cornwall sera en mesure d'augmenter volontairement son niveau de service bilingue. Direct communications between residents and employees will be considered acceptable if they fit into the 3 levels of French mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. The City of Cornwall's approach to diversity is simple. It is about embracing everyone. We will avoid discrimination against people, and we will create a safe and inclusive atmosphere for our residents, our service users, and our employees. We will encourage employees and residents to practice empathy and understanding and recognize that language proficiency does not reflect the only standard of good customer service, but rather appreciate and value the efforts to speak French made by all. We recognize the challenges of language learning and the cultural diversity. This knowledge can help us develop a more inclusive environment. Les communications directes entre les résidents et les employés seront jugées acceptables si elles correspondent à l'un des 3 niveaux de français sous-mentionnés. L'approche de la Ville de Cornwall en matière de diversité est simple. Il s'agit d'embrasser tout le monde. Nous éviterons la discrimination à l'égard des personnes et nous créerons une atmosphère sécuritaire et inclusive pour tous nos employés et nos utilisateurs de services. Nous encouragerons les employés et les résidents à faire preuve d'empathie et de compréhension et à reconnaître que la maîtrise de la langue ne reflète pas la seule norme d'un bon service à la clientèle, mais plutôt à apprécier les efforts de tous pour parler le français. Nous reconnaissons les défis de l'apprentissage des langues et de la diversité culturelle. Ces connaissances peuvent nous aider à créer un environnement plus inclusif. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Lévesque. Before we go to questions, can I get a motion to receive, please? Councillor Gunjo, Councillor Good, Councillor Hollingsworth.
That's good. A couple of quick questions. On page 80 of the report, where you have your next steps, and it says, conduct a review of designated positions within the organization and update the designated position by the end. So are we gonna officially designate some positions as you must be bilingual in order to work on this particular position? Is that the intent?
That is correct. Currently, we have 19 positions that have been designated bilingual, but as you can imagine, our policy is aging well, and a lot of those positions have transformed into something else. So one position could have started somewhere and it is now completely different. So it's hard to judge right now those 19 positions, but we'll renew that with the modern terms and do a comprehensive review of which positions will be designated bilingual.
If I may, Councillor, I think what you're asking relates to some clarity here. We're not changing the overall pool of position. There are positions that are designated by title for which the title is no longer reflected. I think is.
Second question, right below our next point. Sure areas of human resources and economic development recruit bilingual staff when vacancies occur. So does this mean I can't get a job in the economic development department unless I'm bilingual? Is that your intent?
We've not engaged with the team. There are francophone community groups that have asked us to look at how can we promote and access, that'd be festivals, that'd be events, and I don't know what it looks like from an HR economic development, but we're pursuing that. If there are changes, we would come. So we're not proposing, this report doesn't propose any changes of job designation. It refreshes the job designation and sets out a number of areas. And if you recall, I don't know which recommendation, but the clerk is to conduct an engagement with the francophone community groups to seek her findings and the directions that we're recommending to you.
So currently, you don't have to be bilingual to work in economic development or HR, correct? It's a nice to have, but it's not a must have.
If I remember correctly, through you, Mr. Mayor, only one position has been designated bilingual in HR. And the reason we focused on those two areas is because these two areas are trying to recruit new residents and recruit new employees.
Okay. So if you decided to change the language with that, Mr. CAO, you're going to tell us, or you're just going to do the executive thing and do it?
We're conducting, so we've conducted an initial scan and review. The next step, as the clerk highlighted, is one, a review of designated positions that are currently designated with an updated title and function. The clerk is committed to engaging with francophone community groups and come back with that feedback. So there's a number of elements that are at play here. We're not proposing any additional changes, but would certainly engage further with council if it applies.
Well, I'll be candid. I certainly accept and acknowledge that we need to provide services to all of the people in as many languages as humanly possible, and certainly need to staff accordingly. I do have a problem with a potential must-have in economic development because while certainly we deal with the francophone community, there's a number of prospective opportunities where French is not a requirement, and I would hate to see us miss an opportunity to hire a potential superstar and say, sorry, yeah, you'd be really a great fit for us, but you don't speak French, so I guess you're out of luck. I think it's a nice to have, not a must have, and I'll wait for the report, subsequent report moving forward.
Councillor McIntosh.
Yeah, it's a good report. Believe it or not, Macintosh has always promoted bilingualism. I live with a francophone. I've got it. I've watched over the years. I grew up in this town, and I watched the demise of the French language. I really have, and a lot of it's through assimilation, where one partner doesn't speak French or doesn't speak the other. So therefore, my day, kids were brought up usually in the English language if one partner wasn't bilingual. I can remember a day when Cornwall Golf and Country Club, if you were French, you couldn't join. That's how bad things got. Anyway, I always wondered why we didn't have our reports on that in both languages. I think I mentioned that to Manol one time. But I do have some questions on the report. One, I'm going to pick up off what Dean said. I understood by reading this that if you're unilingual English and you have a job with the city, you'll never lose your job. However, when it comes to filling vacancies, will be with bilingual staff. Am I reading this right? Good. Just when I get the phone calls, I can answer them.
Yeah, look, there are some positions that are designated, and that same approach would apply today. There had been, over the years, I guess, levels of exemptions which removed some of those requirements. We're refreshing the requirements that are historic and not necessarily increasing them. But as we conduct a review, we would seek what the Francophone community is hearing, feeling, and where we can improve services. But no, this is not about.
Okay, it's just that on page 80, I'll just read the and signage in both official languages and to fill vacancies with bilingual staff, but Mano had it if possible, but that wasn't in. It's not in here. That changes it a bit.
So that's correct. Not all positions are designated bilingual.
Yeah.
But out of the 19 positions were designated bilingual.
Yeah.
And when you
I have no
look
problem
at,
with that.
and when you look at the front-facing employees, we're at 60-something%. So it's not hard to find those people to fill those vacancies when they occur. To keep in mind, though, we really need to change our mindset. The proficient ones in French are not the only Francophones in our community. I grew up myself with a stepfather who did not speak French. My mother insisted on raising us French. So guess what? He learned French.
Yeah.
He's too shy to talk about it or talk French out in public. But let me tell you, when my grandmother came to live with them and only spoke French, his French came out. French came out with my children too. So I think the majority of people who are Cornwall natives, who were born in Cornwall, have that same ability.
In the
So
new
let's
generation.
embrace them and let them speak French and not correct them and don't judge them, right? So that's what we're trying to change.
My own household, when my daughter and her mother spoke, my wife spoke French, it was because they didn't want me to know what they were talking about. so I always said to myself, I'm going to learn French, but I'm not going to tell them. Anyway, transit wasn't part of this.
Transit is part of the Infrastructure Municipal Works Group.
I think of all the people, our frontline people, who meet people would be transit drivers. No?
They may not be considered
Yeah.
into the front-facing positions,
Yeah.
but they are in the overall employees.
Okay. Police, I know we don't. Police Commission.
Police that did not take part of this.
Didn't
They're
take
not
part
part
in
of
it?
our policy.
I wondered through you, Mr. Mayor, if perhaps the chair could tell me if he has any idea bilingualism of the police department.
Councillor Pell?
I don't have that information with me right now, but I do know that when the officers are on duty and they need to have a French-speaking officer is directed to that call.
Yeah, okay. Interestingly, when we advertised for the CAO's position, did that position include bilingualism preferred?
I seem to recall that it was considered an asset.
Asset? Okay.
Was that hard?
Now you know you got your job. No, that's, you're well qualified. Okay. Yeah, it's just, we're a bilingual town, and I'm proud of that at times. And I talked about how the French language has been diluted in certain areas, and it was funny because in my wife's family, 9 Francophone kids, and when they all get together to speak English, it's amazing. And I asked him one time why, and he said, "Well, we think English now. We don't think French anymore." And I think, we have to. This helps, I think, and I would like to see. I don't want anybody losing their job. I don't think we should have a policy where you have to be bilingual to drive a public works truck or anything like that. But I think really on your front line, all things being equal, if you can speak French, good for you. It's a great service to the community. One other quick thing before I labor on with this. I had 2 guys I met at the curling club, and they're both from Quebec. And I asked them, they were civil servants in Quebec, and they moved to Cornwall. And I said, "Why'd you move to Cornwall?" They said, "Because our wives don't speak English very well, and this is a bilingual town, so they moved to Cornwall." So it does have assets.
Thank you.
Councillor Ngunjo?
Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to see this matter in our agenda, and I look forward to revisiting it in the next future. Effectively, service in French language are a matter of respect of our citizens, of welcome to our guests, and good for business and promoting our community. But I must say that I disagree with a small part of this report. It is not that hard to measure if our policy is being respected. The simple fact that the simple fact is that it has too often not been respected. I doubt whether some departments have even heard about this. Greater care must be taken in many areas. For example, this morning and yesterday and many days before, I used to receive pictures of plates or just information from the city where it is bilingual, but it is not well written in French. For example, trottoir en français is just written trottoir. So it is about changing mind, as you said, and I'm pretty convinced that we have a lot to continue on this way. And it is a great way that we're taking. It's gonna reinforce our community. Being French and English, it's a tool that can reinforce the identity of Cornwall. Parce que parler en français, c'est aussi un atout. Et je suis vraiment heureux de vous entendre parler en français. C'est une richesse. I can speak in English. It's an asset too. So giving to our residents the opportunity, the ability to speak in French and in English, it's going to make our identity stronger. So I think it's something very great. It's a nice way. It's a very beautiful avenue that we're taking here. And for the future, I think it's going to be something very amazing for our community. Reinforcing the French, the bilingualism in our community is something very nice that we're doing. So I really support this. I'm going to support this, that these bilingual activities or project as much I can. Je veux supporter le français dans ma communauté autant que je peux parce que je suis convaincu que c'est une force, c'est un atout d'être bilingue. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Merci.
Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say that the first thing is being bilingual and having been brought up in French. There was a time when I was young when I couldn't speak a word of English. My stepfather took me and said, "You're going to school, you're 6 years old, you're going to English school." And I got called a few names and I got into a couple of fights because of that. But I learned English, actually now better than French. But at the end of the day, in this report, when I saw that we were offering courses, it brought me to people who had worked for the city for 15, 10 years, 12 years, who could have gone to supervisory jobs, but because they couldn't speak French, they were overlooked. At least that's the way they felt. So giving courses in French now will allow, like my son, who works for the federal government, he had to take courses in order to become a supervisor with the federal government. He took his courses and he passed his courses, and so he was able to move up, and his income is amazingly more than what he was when he started. So I'm glad you're teaching French, because when people want to move up to supervisory positions, quand ils veulent un job qui paye plus, ou qui va faire affaire avec les francophones de la ville de Cornwall, en leur montrant le français aux Anglais. Ça leur donne une chance pour une meilleure vie. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Good?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies, I'm just catching my breath. I'm very happy to see this policy brought forward. Je suis fière d'être bilingue. J'ai eu la chance d'apprendre le français dans ma jeunesse et puis j'ai pas tellement la chance d'utiliser, de m'exprimer en français parce que je suis gênée. C'est pas ma langue première. Fait que,
No more.
as an Anglophone growing up, I had the opportunity to learn French, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. I think Councillor McIntosh brought up the loss of the French language, and I see in my generation as a parent a real revitalization of that language. Both our children go to Rose des Vins. My partner is fully Anglophone, and I am French as a second language speaker. But we felt that it was so important to give our children the ability, the tool, the asset to be able to communicate in both official languages in our country. So happy that this is one of the first policies that are coming back to us as being reviewed. 2008, it's been a while. There's clearly been some changes. But I'm very, very pleased to see the percentage of French speakers that are currently within our organization. And I'm also happy to see that this includes all
Sorry,
levels.
Counselor. Mr. Lecomte, I'd ask you not to approach council during the meeting. Thank you. Sorry, Counselor.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to see that it includes all levels and that it includes an upgrading and training of people who have some basic level French that can really be improved in order to serve our community more effectively. And that we're going to be asking, because a lot of people will default to English. It's the way most business is conducted. So I'm very pleased to see this brought forward. I did take note that, as you mentioned earlier, the HR generalist, we have no French, and that, of course, in a recruitment position, when you're recruiting francophone staff, il faut que tu testes leur langue. Tu peux pas vraiment savoir s'ils sont francophones si tu parles pas français toi-même. The other position that I did see was the child care advisor, and I didn't take note of that when I went through and I did interview for one of the at-home childcare spaces, but do we only have one childcare advisor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we employ 1.5 childcare advisors. So we do provide both our Children's Services, Ontario Works, and Housing Services are required by those respective ministries to have French language service plans in place.
Okay, perfect, because I had seen that one as being one that was missing French, and I thought, oh gosh, that seems like a very, very important one to have. You know, as far as Anglophones being restricted from accepting positions, I really believe that this is a requirement for public-facing positions as much as you would require to have a degree in a certain field or education or a certificate to do a certain job. If you're going to be interacting with the public, there at least needs to be, if not a very basic level, then an understanding of how you can respect people's languages and be able to match them up with other appropriate staff who are available to serve our Francophone clients. So the percentage of staff being 60 plus front-facing is an excellent start. I actually don't even think, we don't really need to set our target, I don't think, incredibly high. And this is not to discount the Anglophones as well. I think it's really just to make sure that we are embedding the culture and fabric of our community and the identity of our country within the services that we provide. So I'm very, very proud of this. I had a question, and this is going to kind of stem from some of these policy reviews because there was mention of a difficulty in tracking how some of this is applied. Obviously, you're not going to know how people are answering all of their emails. One of the mechanisms that we used at my previous employment when I was in human resources was an annual accountability statement. And so that included certain policies and or procedures, some of which may have been updated, to check off to say, I confirm that I, understand the requirements as set out in such and such a policy. Throwing that out there as a potential tool that could be used to ensure that new and old staff are still kept up to date, because people aren't really, going through the policy books on the regular, I don't think. So I just wanted to suggest that as a possible tool once we do have our policy review completed, to ensure that staff are up to date and that we cover our behinds too. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, good point. And we do have that tool now where we didn't when the policy was developed. So we know before our platform. And so the policy, when it is revised, will go through all the employees, and they have to they have to read certain parts and answer certain parts to be able to complete the course, or the review of the policy, not the course.
Councillor Ba.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, et merci, Madame Levesque, pour le rapport. Looking forward to seeing sort of the next steps. I just want to make a comment that seemed surprising to me. In terms of the front-facing staff at Glenstorden Lodge, I see there's only 14. I feel like maybe that's not accurate. I feel like everyone there is front-facing, and only 8 speak French. But then we look at the total staff, it's 210, with only 20% speaking French. So my mère, who was in a nursing home a couple of years ago, was very bilingual, obviously francophone, but learned to speak English and could speak English to us at any given time. But when she was at her worst in the nursing home, she would revert back to, the language that she was most comfortable with. And so it was really important that the staff there were able to, or anytime she was in the hospital, which was a bunch of times over a couple of years, it's important that she can communicate in that language, where she can express what's going on with her, what she's feeling, whether she could speak English or not. So I'm very surprised to see that it's significantly lower at Glenstorden Lodge. However, I also am very aware of the hiring struggles at Glenstorden Lodge. So I wouldn't say don't hire a nurse because they can't speak French. I would say 100% hire a nurse that is unilingual English, and then maybe we can pay for some training, which is part of all of this, right? So I think of all of the front-facing departments, that is one that is probably, for me, the most important, because we have seniors in their most vulnerable state that want to communicate. So anyways, I just wanted to make that comment. I don't know if there's any response to that, but I think that's probably one of the important departments to really focus on. Merci.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a background story to that. So the amount of staff at the Glenstorden Lodge is great. And the director is fairly new to the position, and she doesn't know everyone personally to bring out that French. For example, Councillor Good, I did not know you were bilingual. I did not know that you could speak French. And so you can imagine having a staff of 100 people, it's very hard to, 210? It's very hard to know exactly who can speak French. And she just wasn't comfortable putting a number and guaranteeing that number. So it is low, and she did admit it was probably very low, but without the actual data in front of her, she could not guarantee a higher number.
Councillor Dupel, then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. It was a great report, and I think that you sort of said it right off the start where we need to be able to change a mindset. And I think that being able to serve people in both official languages is a wonderful thing. I think it's something we should be proud of as a community. For myself, growing up, I grew up with a Francophone dad and an English mom. My mom spoke no French. My dad spoke all of French, no English. My dad was from Hawkesbury. My mother was from St. Raffles, so it was completely different. After 5 children, she said she could only learn how to swear in French. So I know what the both cultures bring, and I know that being able to offer both official languages to the residents of Cornwall is wonderful. And I think that when you look at the French Language Act and you look at things that you're proposing through administration in this report, I think it's wonderful, and I think that it's only the community that's going to benefit from this, and being able to obtain the services from your city, from the city that you live in your official language, is just a given. And I think that this is the sign of our city of Cornwall progressing in a progressive manner that's going to afford the rights to everyone who lives within our community, the right to be served in the language of their choice. So I think it's a win-win situation. Thank you. Merci.
Councilor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to, I think it's wonderful that we're congratulating ourselves that we're going to resolving to serve people in both languages, but I want to pay tribute to Kim Baird, who was the driving force behind the 2008 review of our policy, and it was thanks to Kim's leadership that was when we instituted the policy that a person who is, we call them front-facing employees, that they should be able to speak in either language. So we're going to do better, we're fine-tuning, but this is not new. I just want to say that, as you've demonstrated by the numbers of the people who are bilingual who have these front-facing positions, it's not as though we haven't been doing this. No. Now, of course, we can get better. So I look forward to seeing what the review shows, because it's important to review this from the Francophone perspective. We really can't tell how well served the Francophones feel. But I have to say that I think we should be really careful, and I was glad Councillor Hollingsworth brought up the fact that the ambiguity where it sounds like you have to be bilingual or there's no job for you in Cornwall. We have to be careful about that, about the misapprehension that people feel that, you know, what do they call it, reverse discrimination? So let's watch our language to make sure we don't do that. And I'm interested to know how the French-speaking classes are going to work. What do we have in mind? Will we
Right now, French courses are offered to employees. It's voluntary, and they sign up themselves. What we'd like to turn to is a model where French services or French language is given in-house. So we would create a class, bring in, 20, 25 employees and take a class to better their French. So there are some employees that have basic French. They could learn
Right.
to develop that language, or, somebody brand new just wanting to be able to converse in French.
So those who do take French right now, what's the mechanism? Where do they?
They attend a class and they do
Where?
homework
Like-
in a center here in Cornwall.
At the Moi J'apprends probably, eh? Yeah, okay, because I take French there. And I know a couple of employees who take French there. But at one point, I thought we were going to do something in-house.
So we want to grow that program a
yeah.
little bit.
Okay. And at the point, say if somebody demonstrates proficiency they didn't have before, will there be recompense for that? Or is just assumed that you're a better employee, obviously, if you can work in both languages, so there won't be any monetary? Because sometimes people who do qualify, as Councillor Gardner said, his son, for example, obviously makes more money bilingual than he had otherwise.
Well, if we did that, you probably wouldn't want to see me at budget time, since our current population is like 50-50 almost, right? So that means that not just the ones taking French courses, but everyone who has the French capability would be paid some kind of bonus. That wasn't my intent.
Okay, and I have to say, we talked about the importance of our Economic Development Department having French capability, but let's not forget that we cut money out of the Economic Development Department for recruitment in this last budget cycle. And I just have to say that because I think it was a mistake, and we can't say at one point it's important and on the other hand take money away from the program. So thank you.
Further questions? Okay. Je veux remercier l'administration, Madame l'évêque, Monsieur Fleury pour ce rapport. Comme vous savez, je suis anglophone. pas comme la conseillère Good, je suis gêné quand je parle français. Je vois les membres de notre communauté francophone ici ce soir et merci Diane. C'est pas toujours facile pour moi pour parler français, mais je sais. Et c'est important parce que je vous représente comme les autres conseillers. Nous vous représentons tous. Et nous sommes une communauté bilingue, nous avons une histoire riche. Et cette histoire, c'est inclusif. C'est les Anglais, les Français, les Mohawks, puis les autres, tout le monde. Alors, ce report, je pense qu'il y a des étapes positives. Les étapes sont vraiment positives. Et ben, c'est tout pour moi. I look forward to the next steps and moving forward in this and improving the services we can provide our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's those efforts that us Francophone really appreciate, so thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of receiving? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to switch roles again.
Councillor Hollingsworth, you're the acting mayor. Can I ask you to come up here for 5 minutes, please? Just need a quick break. Thank you.
All right. So what do we have next, Madam Clerk?
Next is action reports. The first one is mandatory recycling and clear bag collection program, with a recommendation that council receive this report, that council direct administration to proceed with the implementation of clear bag collection program as described in this report, with a soft launch of January 1st, 2025, and commencement of full enforcement on April 1st, 2025. Subject to approval of recommendation B, that council direct administration to implement a clear bag policy for users of the landfill site who deliver waste directly to the landfill site. And D, subject to approval of recommendation B, that council increase the allowable curbside waste set out bag limit from 2 bags to 4 bags.
All right, so I need a mover for the recommendations. Councillor
Just
Good.
a point of clarification, is there, or a point of interest, can we vote on all of these motions individually rather than one big bundle?
I think technically that's in order, is it not,
Yep,
Madam
if
Clerk?
we-
All
Thank
right,
you.
so then guess I'll look for a mover for item A, I guess. Council received the report. Well, I prefer all, but I'm easy. So, any discussion on item A? Councilors, now, do you gentlemen wish to make some kind of presentation, or do you want to just be available for questions?
We're in your hands, Mr.
Whatever you think is going to expedite things, let's go with that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Acting Mayor, we're available to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, well, I think in terms of order, we'll throw the motions out, and if council wants to ask questions to our esteemed gentleman, we can push forward with that. So currently, we have received the reports. Any debate on receiving? Not seeing any debate. All in favor to receive? Done. All right, so item B, can I get somebody to Councillor Good? Can I get a seconder? Councillor McDonald? Any discussion, questions? Councillor Bennett?
Did we have our public consultation about this yet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we had an online session in December as well as 2 public open houses.
And what was the feedback? Obviously, was overwhelmingly in favor, or? I don't remember it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think there's a variety of feedback. I think the most common comments that we received, we included, and we included our responses to. I think, initially there is some hesitancy once the idea is presented, but once you get to presenting the rationale why, the reasons why, the legislative reasons, the life of the landfill, residents begin to understand the direction that we're heading.
So I know a lot of the questions I've gotten, and I'm sure is something that's helped alleviate some fears, was the fact that they can still have garbage bags within the clear bag for personal items and that sort of things.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we're recommending a certain number of opaque bags which are permissible in a clear bag for privacy items, as well as cans still can be used by the residential sector, either by loosely placing in a can or putting a clear bag in the can. So it can also be, privacy can also be provided in that manner as well.
Thank you.
I'm just going to rewind a bit here. These gentlemen do have a presentation which may answer some of the questions proactively, so I'm going to ask them to refer to that. No? Okay. No?
Were there, sorry, Michael, were there any areas of the report that you wanted to highlight prior to taking questions? I with the chair, I think you were heading through motions and we didn't want to interrupt the flow, but if there are questions, we might want to present the context. For example, Councillor Bennett's question relating to consultations are some of the areas that, you know, we got feedback and some of the considerations. Michael, we're in your hands if you prefer to take questions or set the context, whichever you'd like.
Okay, well, it sounds like we'll continue, Mr. Fawthorpe, is that all right? Okay, so then I have my speakers list. I don't know. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth, for that. So I have Councillor Good first and Councillor Hébert.
Thank you so much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was really, really happy with this report. I made a whole bunch of notes. So I think the biggest thing that I see from this, and I'm really going to speak to all three of the points, although I understand we're voting on them separately, but this is a major contributing factor to preserving and maximizing the existing capacity at the landfill. If there's one thing that I hear more than anything from taxpayers is keep our taxes low and don't cut services. And I've heard through a number of conversations with both of you gentlemen that the longer we can prolong the life of the landfill, we are talking major, major savings, like tens, hundreds of millions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, definitely tens. The post-closure costs of the landfill were estimated at plus or minus $38 million in 2019. That number has likely significantly increased. Absolutely, every year that we can extend the life of the landfill is money saved for residents.
Wonderful. And I noted that there were, different options that were assessed in terms of trying to divert waste from the landfill. And this is such a simple behavior change, really no cost implication to us or to the residents. It's just a matter of switching from opaque bags to clear bags. And what this allows us to do, if I'm understanding correctly, is ensure that we are implementing the mandatory recycling and not just saying we want to implement it. Otherwise, how else would we track? And the other options, like the mandatory bin set out, I find that insufficient as well. And, part of it, as was mentioned, if you've got a backyard compost that I know Councillor McIntosh talks about, me too. We're compost buddies, I suppose. If you could call us that. But I really think that whatever activities we can do to encourage and maximize the longevity of the landfill, we're going to see tax savings to our residents, savings to the taxpayers. So I urge those that may have felt uncomfortable with this when they first heard the news to recognize that this small behavior change has a massive implication to our long-term debt as a corporation, as a city. We're only talking about item B, correct? Clearly, we are implementing the organics program in January 2025, whether we like it or not. That's mandated by the province. And I see this as being a very logical step to implement this at the same time. And I think the soft launch is over the summer, correct?
through you, Mr. Mayor, we're proposing it in January 1st. On January 1st, the soft launch would begin. 4 months later, we would begin with the full launch.
Okay, so my misunderstanding, but the information, the educational component is going to come out before that. If I can ask, and I probably should have just like emailed you guys before this, but my apologies. I imagine, because we don't all know what goes in the recycling or what goes in the garbage, and different municipalities can recycle different things. Are there, and I have 2 items that I thought are probably highly disposed of or put in the landfill in the trash that are recyclable. I've got coffee cups and plastic bags. Those are 2 things that we recycle in our community, right? Are there any other kind of common items that we recycle that you think just anecdotally end up in the trash?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. One of the other items that we've implemented in the last number of years is the K-Cup pods too. So we do that. That's one item that's unique to Cornwall. A lot of larger municipalities can't recycle those. And then there's also black plastics. A lot of larger municipalities have optical sorting equipment where it runs off of like lasers, and it can't recognize black type plastic. So that stuff gets landfilled in other larger setups as well.
And are we doing manual sorting for our recycling?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a large majority of our sorting is manual labor.
I was actually quite privileged, I want to say maybe 8 years ago, I toured the landfill with Councillor Hebert and a small group. It's been a little while, but it was really great to see it up close. And I imagine there's also items that end up in the recycling that probably should go in the garbage, like styrofoam, maybe soiled cardboard. I'm imagining there's some other things that they're commonly just getting tossed out. So I think this falls in line really with an education around what we offer as a city, what we in Cornwall, not everyone who lives here now has lived here forever. My in-laws are from Whitby, and they can recycle styrofoam, but they can't recycle plastic bags or coffee cups. So it's a little bit, you visit somewhere, you've got to learn. But I love this as an educational opportunity for us to really inform our residents what belongs where. I hope we can bring this to the kids, because I think kids are so good at enforcing the law in their households. I am honestly in favor of all of the recommendations that have been placed forward here. And whenever they get debated again, I'll bring them back. But I think this is a very reasonable policy, and I'm happy to see it. Thank you.
Councillor Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm going to surprise everybody with how I feel about this report. I have been actively a waste reducer most of my adult life, and have tried to take that to the council table. And although what's recommended I think is very well intentioned, I think would deserve some reconsideration. So originally I was hoping to see a bin set out policy brought to us. But I realize now that with the new producer responsibility pickup, we will not be the ones picking up the recycling, and so we might not actually see if there's a blue bin set out. It's just another reason why I'm nervous about this whole producer responsibility thing. I think it's going to be, it won't be as comprehensive as our current recycling program, so I'm worried about that. However, I think the mandatory blue bin would be better received by the community, first of all, and be more effective. I know that there's some concerns about those who might not be putting green bin waste on a weekly basis, but I think we can, if there was an opportunity to model a policy that could not include the green bin and maybe just the blue bin. And I also understand there are some folks who don't create as much recycling as others, but you can't convince me that a human being that exists for 7 days doesn't create a little bit of recycling. And so your recycling bin doesn't need to be full to be put out the curb. It just needs to have something in it. And so I would have much rather seen a blue bin, a mandatory recycling where you have to have recycling in your bin for us to take your waste than what we see now. 100% not in favor of a pay as you throw. I think that would never fly. But I'm not supportive of the clear bag recommendation. First and foremost, it's likely the issue I've seen the most negativity about across the community in the 9 years that I've been on council. I think that rings really true with the survey responses. We had 1,789 responses. And that's a huge response. So that on its own, having that many folks wanting to respond to a survey tells me that there's a lot of interest in this topic. Beyond that, 1,333 of them were not in favor of the recommendation. That's 74.5% of the folks who responded to the survey. That's a little bit more than just on the fence. However, I'm also been one that has said multiple times we're elected to make difficult decisions. So sometimes we make decisions that don't necessarily align with what the community is telling us, because in our positions we see the advantages of doing something difficult. And so this is not one of these cases. I'm hearing the community feedback, but I'm also having some concerns about some of the rollout. To address the privacy concerns, residents can put their I guess, confidential items within a bag, or the bags in a bin at the road, sorry. So what about the residents who don't have a bin? I'm sure the city's not gonna pick up the tab for the garbage bins at the road. There are also many people who might not have the space to store a bin. So folks who are in apartment living or in small spaces, there may not be an actual location for them to store a bin. This conversation happened when we implemented the bins for the commercial sector. Some of our businesses just didn't have space for these bins. And so, you know, there's just that. It's an accessibility piece too, right? So if we're asking folks to go buy a bin, if you don't have transportation, you're gonna go to Canadian Tire and take a bin on the bus home with you because you want to use a bin for privacy. So just like all of these little things that seem so inconsequential, but to me, I feel are going to be big pieces of people's lives. So then we're also talking about, you know, residents can use privacy bags for intimate items. Who's checking that? Nobody. I hope that defeats the purpose, right? It's an intimate, they're intimate items. But I also can see folks doing that and just putting recycling in it. No one's going to check that, right? So people may learn, oh, I can put things in a smaller bag and then sneak it in my garbage, and no one's going to know any differently. So that I feel people are going to get away with it regardless. And then there's, you know, recommendation when it comes to private documents. Well, you can shred it and put that in your recycling bin. Who has access to a shredder anymore? And no one's going to pay for a shredding company to, you know, shred folks' personal information. The city's not going to pay the tab for that either. Sorry, was there a comment?
No, just that I'm behind the times, I own a shredder.
Okay, everybody go to Councillor McIntosh's home to shred their paper. Anyways, there's also an attempt in the report to address the cost and availability concerns. I think that section really addressed the availability, but not the cost. I don't know if the cost is more or less. It doesn't actually state it in the report, although the title of that section is cost and availability. I'd love to see that information. There's also mention, and this is where I was turned off completely. I was on the fence about the clear bag. I wasn't sure. And here we're saying we're going to now change the bag limit from 2 to 4. And that's where I was like, man, we had a heck of a fight to get to 2. And so it's, you know, we're saying in the report the 4 bags would help larger families. Well, if we're forcing them to recycle more, shouldn't we actually be reducing our bag limit? If we're actually getting to a point where they're having to recycle, why are we increasing from 2 to 4? It's counterproductive to go back on something that took us so long to implement. We were so behind to start with. We're told 14% of our residents, our residential homes don't recycle, but we're going to increase their bag limit to 4, and they can get creative in hiding their recycling. I assume this is going to happen, and some will try to hide it in these privacy bags. So what about the 86% who have been recycling? And now they're going to have access to 4 bags. Are they going to start recycling less? I don't know. I just feel like I could have maybe got on board with the clear bag, but going back to the 4, that is a make or break for me. And I really obviously appreciate the effort in reducing the waste going into the landfill. I've modeled my life around it for the most part. I just think there are better ways of doing it. in a way that will have community buy-in, because there isn't right now. And so I think we're going to see more garbage bags on the side of the road than we've ever seen, or just people trying to be sneaky about it. So I think there are ways of doing it. I just don't think this is the way about it. My thoughts. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh. Mr. Fother, did you want to respond?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just if I could to some of the points raised. So I guess just first off, I would like to highlight that we have a provincial requirement to have a diversion program and divert 40% of our organics that are currently going to the landfill away from the landfill. So that needs to be in effect for next year. In regards to a bin set out program, some of the challenges is that there's nothing requiring residents to actually to use recycling and organics as part of a bin set out program. So in other words, a lot of other municipalities have experienced, for instance, in regards to organic collection, the municipality pays for the bin, delivers the bin. In order to have your garbage collected, you have to have your organics bin out. Well, it may not be used to its fullest effect, which would hurt our ability to divert 40% of our organics away. So for instance, to have garbage collected, the organics bin is rolled to the curb, not utilized, so garbage is collected. You could change it that there has to be something in the organics collection, but that's not to say that there isn't a significant amount of organics in the garbage, as well as it's punitive to those that are using composters on their own property or in their own households. So that was some of the, I guess, the problems associated with the bin set out program. I think a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from the municipalities that we've consulted with as part of this that have undergone the transition to a clear bag program is a lot of the hesitation that the public, we are all receiving or the public has communicated. However, after it is implemented, it has been extremely successful. I think there's certainly an initial hesitation about privacy. That's generally the largest and biggest comment. However, it has been an overwhelming success with the staff that we've talked to in those municipalities. In regards to the privacy items, so cans are acceptable, as well as using the opaque bags in a clear bag as well. So both are completely acceptable. There's a restricted amount. If residents are over and above that amount, they would proceed through the enforcement process. In regards to documents, our recommendation would be that documents should either be shredded or certainly not put in the garbage, because that's not necessarily destroying the document. So we wouldn't recommend private documents be thrown in the garbage. In regards to cost, our consultation with other municipalities is that a clear bag is the same cost as a black bag. The biggest concern is availability. So we would have to work with the retailers to ensure that the proper amount of stock is in the stores for when we're ready to roll out with a soft launch. So as part of our timeline, we would begin that consultation in about 6 to 8 months. Starting now, and it would take about 6 to 8 months for the stores to be stocked and ready to handle a transition to clear bags. In regards to the bag limit, so I can speak to that. So the purpose of Dave, Mr. Kuhn, feel free to jump in if you have additional comments, but so the purpose of the bag limit is to increase diversion. So you are restricting residents the amount of garbage that can go to the curb in order to ensure that residents recycle and use organics collection. That is the main goal of a bag limit. And so by implementing a clear bag program, you are now, that's how diversion is being forced. And so basically the incentive to transition to a clear bag clear bag program from a resident's perspective is that a bag limit could potentially increase, and you're still getting the diversion you need, because all recyclables have to be in the recycling, all organics have to be in the organics collection bin. So in other words, a lot of the comments that we receive often when bag limits are imposed is that they can be punitive on large young families. And I would agree that that is a very small percentage, and I think it's represented in the amount of bag tags that we have to sell. However, it is certainly for some families, I think it can be it can impact them. So that is really the purpose for the bag limit, or for the bag limit increase. If council wanted to keep the bag limit at 2, staff would be, completely amenable to that. I think it is primarily that it is one of the benefits of going to a clear bag program that we could consider increasing the bag limit. It's not necessarily we have to, and the reason for it is because the diversion is occurring through mandatory recycling and mandatory organics collection.
Thank you for the response, Mr. Fothrop. And this is why I've asked to divide the motions. So whether or not, whatever we see with the clear bag vote, when it comes to the bag limit, if the clear bag is voted in favor of, when we get to the bag limit, I still want to be able to push to make sure that we keep that 2 bag. Because I hear the argument, but I feel like we're giving families an opportunity to create even less waste now. So it's not making sense in my mind why we would do this. So I'm also not the expert in this. This is just me having an opinion. So thank you.
Councillor McIntosh.
Whether I put my garbage out in a clear bag or another kind of bag doesn't make any difference to me. It's all the same. Just want to do some housekeeping here. Plastic bags you can put in recycling? Like the bread, what bread comes in and that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
I was always told if it had any black on it, I couldn't. Oh,
No,
okay.
through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
I'm in business. Okay.
Yes, you can. I think we would, and Dave can comment, we usually would recommend that residents, if you have them, put them all in one bag. Like if you have a bulk amount of them, don't individually put them in because that causes us
Tim
problems.
Horton cups?
Tim Hortons cups, yes,
Recyclable?
correct.
And, okay. If I don't know this, and I'm a counselor, I'm embarrassed to say this, then maybe we do a little more, because I was told by somebody who was a former mayor that I couldn't put my Tim Horton cups into the recycling bin, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think other municipalities, they may not take them, but we do.
Yeah. I don't think there's going to be any, I can put up 4 bags, so I'm going to find more garbage to put in. I mean, I'm conditioned now. Sometimes I only put out 1, 2. When I'm living at the Summer Palace in the summer there, I use their bins. Some days weeks I don't even put out any. So I don't think there's going to be a mad rush. But I think we're conditioned now to this 2-bag thing, and it's amazing how you can compact rather than just throw it in a big garbage bag. I've learned to really compact it, and you can put twice as much in. So if you get down to 1 bag, if you want. Yeah. The tags, I was told, Dave, I remember you the last time you were here, that the sale of tags have exceeded expectations.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Yeah, we still sell a pretty large amount of bag tags every week.
Yeah, okay, so I guess that some people are going over the limit legally.
Correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 2-bag limit is really designed, and the theory around it is it's a financial incentive for people to divert their waste. Where if we switch to clear bags, you remove the financial incentive. They can't buy their way out of diverting waste, which is what we're seeing in a lot of instances right now. Yeah. You'll see large families with 8 bags, 6 of them tagged, no recycling, and that's fairly common.
Michael mentioned about families. We have 2 people in my house, and we don't generate a lot, and I do the composting thing and all that. But we had guests for the last 3 weeks because of an emergency in the family, and I think we had 8 people living in my house. I was amazed at the amount of garbage that came out those 2 weeks that I put out the garbage. So it's easy when you just have 2 people. When you get 5, 6 in a household, there's a lot more garbage. You talk about, on page 113, you talk about people, the contractors cutting their hands, and I watch these guys, and they're good, and they work hard. They just grab my bag, and nobody holds it up to see what's in it. I find it hard. I'm not doubting that, but I'm just saying how they could, and they all wear these gloves. So you actually, I guess it would be true then, we've had employees on sanitation duty injure their hands because somebody put a broken glass in a garbage container or in a bag.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, and it's not just glass or knives. They've also been injured by knives, but there's also needles that have been concealed in black bags where they've been actually picked through their work clothes, and then they have to go and get the required testing at the hospital and await results for that as well.
Okay. Now I have a tin garbage can, one of the old jobs. Can I still put my garbage in that rather than in a clear bag?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, like if it's a garbage container,
Yeah,
and it can go into a clear bag and into the garbage can, or what we've dubbed our gold standard is your bags without skip the clear bag altogether and put it loose into a garbage can.
Okay, somebody's asked me that question. They're going to have to get rid of their bins and not. So that's okay. And it change is never easy. And we've been at this now for 4 years of slowly morphing. And I'm amazed that Dean and I all live within a couple of blocks of each other. And I'm amazed at the number of people who recycle. It's incredible. I don't know if that's universal across the city, but certainly in the West End, recycling 2 bins out all the time. So I have no problem with the clear bags now. At first I hesitated, but what difference does it make to me what kind of a bag I'm putting stuff in?
Councillor Hollingsworth.
So, Mr. Fothrop, I know you said it. The province has mandated 40% diversion, correct?
Correct, from the residential sector, yeah.
2025.
Correct.
What are we at currently?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it is 40% from where we are currently.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we need to capture that amount of residential organics by 2025. Our current diversion rate for the city is it was 36%, which is fairly low comparing to the rest of the province. And through some of the initiatives, we're just finishing our annual report. The number is around 42%. So
Now, I've been to the landfill site and I've watched the shunters doing their thing. How do you measure what's being, how do you figure that number out? Like I've watched it and I don't see a guy sitting there or a woman with the calculator saying, yeah, oh, okay. So I've watched those guys on a Saturday. It doesn't look like anybody's counting anything to me. So how do you figure out what you're diverting and what you're not? How do we know what's organic and what's not organic?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, with the new sorting policy that we put in place with the surcharge policy at the landfill site, we do still see the diverted material leave the site. So if it's clean wood that's being diverted, we chip it and it goes away to market and it's transported off site, and all of the material that comes in and out of our site passes over the scale. So that's how it's calculated.
Okay. We don't really know, as far as the recycling thing goes, we don't know how the producers are going to manage this, do we? Or just, like, they're not going to officially say, here, everybody's your blue box, and we can't legislate it as such. We don't know what's going to happen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are some items that have not been finalized yet. I believe the RFP for the collection services is being evaluated by Circular Materials of Ontario, and the RFP for the processing of residential blue box material, I believe it closed and it's being evaluated as well, but we've not been made privy to any of that information as of yet.
Okay. There's a lot of plastic out there that's not recyclable, correct?
Through you,
We
Mr.
tell
Mayor,
people it
correct,
is,
yeah.
but it's not.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Yeah, so I come out with my Coke bottle and I finish my Coke bottle and I put it in the blue box. It's conceivable, and maybe not Coke, but some plastic containers, whatever they may be, that they're going to end up in the landfill site anyway because they're not recyclable, correct?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's a beverage product, it is recyclable. And the best thing that we have available is our Recycle Coach app, which is up to date with all of the items that are recyclable. So if there isn't an off item that you're not sure about, you can check the app. And if it's not on the app, then residents are encouraged to either call, email, or drop us a line, and we can give them that information.
Maybe be a bit cynical, but I am willing to wager there are many people that don't check apps or concerned. It's plastic, it goes in the blue box, whether it's recyclable or not. I'll let somebody else figure that out. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So the gold standard is I have my garbage can, and I don't get a clear bag. I just do the right thing and put my stuff in the garbage can, right? I just don't put my organic stuff in there. I put it in my green bin. And then said, the garbage collecting guy just goes and dumps it, or he puts it on his machine and he flips it up into the truck and he drives away, right? That's the gold standard. Now here's the question that I have that I don't understand. If I put recycling stuff on the bottom, top it up with garbage on the top, and it's in a black garbage container, how is the individual driving the truck going to know if there's recycling stuff on the bottom or not until after he's essentially dumped it in the truck?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so we're going to see when it's dumped into the hopper of the truck.
Yeah, but once it's in the
that's correct,
hopper,
yeah.
it's not like he can't not pick it up. It's already been, he's not going to
That's correct, and we're not going to take it out, but it will be recorded, and we'll be following up with that tenant or that resident or that property owner after the fact.
Send a garbage bylaw guy around and say, here's a fine because you did the wrong thing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would proceed through the enforcement process. The first is a notice on the door, and then it proceeds through 5 steps from there.
So at some point, if said individual keeps abusing it, we're just not going to pick up his garbage anymore? Is that kinda
Through
how
you,
this
Mr.
works?
Mayor, they would receive fines, or they would, depending on which step they're at, they would potentially have garbage left behind.
And then, of course, it's already been expressed, there's nothing stopping me from putting recycling stuff in my small mini translucent bag and putting that in the clear bag. It's not like we're going to check. It's not like I expect you to check or my garbage removal guys to check or people to check. We're just going to hope that people will do the right thing. And Your Worship, I guess we're technically voting. Oh, last point that I want to ask. If we endorse B, item B, we're really saying we're going ahead with the program, correct? We're doing clear bags.
Correct. At residential collection, C is at the landfill facility.
Right. And so these subsequent motions down the way, talking about public and stakeholder consultation phase, all we're really doing at that point is educating people, telling them how we're going to implement this. It's not like they're going to get one last crack to say, this is the worst program ever, don't do it. Like, we're doing it. All we're doing is telling you what it is you need to know to be able to run this properly, correct?
Correct.
I'm gonna vote against it, Your Worship. I get what administration's going. I do. They're trying to manage the landfill site. We're legislated to try to get but it just feels like there's a lot of variables right now that I don't really know. I don't know what the producers are going to do in terms of blue box or recycling, so I don't know how that's going to affect. We've talked about composting. What I would love to see us is kind of donate these green bins and let people kind of ease their way into it before we then say, okay. So I would love to see us kind of maybe try to build some habits and then potentially talk clear bag. Simply because if we're talking about changing behavior, which is essentially what we're trying to do here, it feels like we're just throwing a whole bunch of things all at once. And then on top of that, we talked about 2 bags, but now we're going back to 4 bags. It just feels like there's an awful lot of kind of balls in the air. I would love to see what the producer recycling program is going to look like so that I can determine how that is going to affect this particular program. So while I'm not opposed to the concept, nor am I opposed to even perhaps the way it's got to be implemented. It's implemented. It seems like this is the only way. It kind of feels like we're doing it without knowing all of the circumstances, particularly the whole blue box thing, and how people are going to relate to the green bin program as well. So I'm going to vote against it. I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but it just feels like we haven't gotten everybody up to speed yet on other things, i.e. in particular the green bin and how the producers are going to handle waste. One more question. What happens if we don't get to our 40%? The province has said you have to do it, and guess what? We tried and we're not there yet. Even if we do this, there's no guarantee this is going to get us to the number we want. I mean, the numbers seem compelling, so maybe it's a fait accompli, but there's nothing to suggest this is the absolute home run we're looking for.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, the diversion rates are tested through other municipalities.
Sure.
In regards to enforcement, Dave can add more. I would say it's more, eventually we're going to have to apply to expand the landfill, receive an ECA for expanding the landfill. And if we don't have a mandatory organics collection, or we're not diverting the required amount of organics, I would suggest that's going to be a challenge, and that's the first thing they're going to be telling us.
So I guess, Your Worship, I can get behind the whole mandatory organics thing, but I'm not completely on board with the clear bag program. And do they both have to be implemented simultaneously? Is that what you're telling me? Could we say mandatory organics without the clear bag program?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be similar to the first option, which would be basically bin set out, which would be.
And let's hope for the best.
It's a hope for the best. Somebody could, again, other municipalities have gone through this, have required that, have gone down the bin set out path, where people must put out their recycling, people must put out their organics collection bins, and it can result in not full use of those bins.
Well, if it was, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Apologize. Through you, Mr. Mayor, a lot of those municipalities that had been set out programs have transitioned to clear bag programs as because of not reaching the required diversion.
Well, I guess that's kind of probably would be my preferred option if this sounds kind of backwards, is that I'd rather like do the green bin for 12 months and then transition, so that potentially people can kind of already naturally start changing their habits with us kind of imposing on high. And I realize it's the longer road, but that would be my preference. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, I have Councillor Gardner next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the report. I thought it was quite positive. The fact that you recognized other municipalities who have done this and have been successful does not mean we won't be successful. We possibly will. The only issue I had is what Councillor Ebert brought up, the 4 bags. For months, we worked with you guys and listened to reports. We got it down to 2 bags. Now you're saying that you want to put 4 bags out. So for me, if I put 2 full bags of something there and I take 2 more, then there's a heck of a lot more in the landfill. So I can't get my head around how 4 bags should equal 2 bags. I would much prefer to have 2 bags like it was, because it's not a problem. I don't think it's been a problem up to now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as we indicated, administration would certainly be completely happy with keeping the existing 2-bag limit in place. The reason we have proposed it is because many municipalities have been able to increase the bag limit following a mandatory organics and diversion program. If council wishes to keep the existing 2-bag limit in place, it is basically a carrot to the resident to basically say, as long as you're diverting and as long as you're implementing, as long as you're recycling, bag limit in theory could increase. However, we could delay that, monitor the program, and bring it back at a later date. It's really one of the benefits of moving to a clear bag program, is that you could increase the bag limit. However, that's absolutely at council's discretion and administration. It's
I get
okay
that.
either way.
I get that, but the problem is now, and say in the last 6 months, we've been doing with 2 bags. And there are families with 3 and 5 and 2 and whatever. The 2 bags are working, as far as I can see. I've seen some people who were putting 2 bags out before are only putting 1 out. Now, I took to take banana peels and orange peels and cores and put them in my garden. That's how I handle that stuff. And I had tomatoes that were huge this year, so I'll keep doing that. But I will vote, I'll vote for this because I think it's the right thing to do at the end of the day. But I'll vote if it comes to 2 bags, 4 bags. I would much prefer to have 2 bags. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Minjo.
Mr. Mayor, I support this program, and I will vote for it, sure. I think the key point is the communication we're going to have with our people, our residents, to explain them how this can be benefit for the environment. The key thing is to make people understand that the longer we extend the life of landfills through this kind of program, the less taxpayer will have to pay for setting a new landfill site. So, and we have to recognize too that this kind of measure do intrude upon households. But at the same time, if we do things together, we're going to be success. But saying that, I wanted to discuss few points with you. The first question is about landfill. Please, can you tell me if the landfill was certified? Or if yes, when was it certified for the last time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we have an ECA for the landfill. Dave, I don't know when the last ECA was, but.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the current landfill site was designed and developed in the late 70s, and it was commenced operations in 1985. It's undergone different amendments to our ECA throughout the years to reflect different initiatives that we're doing. We had our latest amendment was in 2021 or early 2022 to reflect the approval for the alternative daily cover that we are currently waiting for. It's been ordered, it's been purchased. We're just waiting for it to be dropped off at our site and our contracted staff to be trained on it. But to answer your question, it has been amended many times throughout the years.
Okay. Thank you very much. Speaking about the enforcement, technically, who's going to be in charge of that? Do we have to hire more staff, or how are you going to organize that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so it will be reported primarily through the collection staff and enforced by city staff when necessary. And so right now, I don't believe we anticipate any impact to staffing. It would be something that we monitor, but right now, primarily just done through the collection contract and then follow up with our existing resources.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Last question. During your answer, you spoke about a few municipalities that you contact to get more information. Please, can you share some? Can you give some name to make sure to make us understand who you're talking about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. So City of Peterborough was one that we did extensive consultation with. Other municipalities with clear bags or Aurelia, Guelph, Kawartha Lakes, Markham. There's a number of municipalities that have a clear bag program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dupel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this has been a lengthy conversation, and a lot of my questions were answered. I do share a lot of the things raised by Councillor Hubert, and I do support those for sure. I had a couple of questions. So I know that when you speak about the app and log on to the app, and it is really all about education. And I was just wondering, like, is there any thought, or are we currently doing it? Because I'm not following everything that's happening or comes out. But is there any like little Facebook posts that say, "Did you know you can recycle this? Did you know?" Like just one item at a time that you can put out there on Facebook. So the resident going through Facebook says, "Oh, I never knew I could recycle a Tim Hortons coffee cup," or "I never knew," but not putting like lists and lists and having them go on apps. I think that if we did some did you knows, I think it goes a long way with your average resident, and they say, "Oh, I've seen that in passing."
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do public education, but to your point, I think we could look to improve it.
Yeah, I think it generates, conversation at a lunchroom table, at a work, did you hear that or did you see that? So that. My other question for you, Mr. Mayor, is what kind of revenue have we generated with bag tags?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, last year was about 100,000 through bag tag sales.
All right. All right, and I wanted to also, I know that Councillor Heber touched on it, but if I can, like looking at the survey responses, they were quite high when it comes to the clear bag. I mean, to me, that stood out to me, and I realized that we've, consulted with other municipalities and all that, but it was quite evident that it stood out, and I've received probably more phone calls on that than most things in the most recent months. So I was just wondering, like, what consideration was given to that level of a response?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say that we did a very good job advertising. We sent a notice to every property owner in the city. Access to the survey was very easy, so residents could easily access it. And I think that was one of the primary drivers of the high response rate. And I think with the results too that you see in the report, a lot of that information or that survey was taken upon first glance. It with a paragraph explaining the program, but it wasn't after the public consultation. It wasn't after all the questions have been answered. It wasn't after why the program is being implemented. It wasn't after why the legislation was explained and what requirements the city is under. And the resident hadn't heard about or necessarily had heard about our life of our landfill and the impending costs of closure as well as finding an alternative site. So absolutely, those are the results and the answers to the questions. However, that's after receiving the notice, primarily after receiving the notice and reading a short paragraph about the program.
All right, and I think through you, Mr. Mayor, like having some reservations as we debate, item B. I mean, I think that after people receive information at a public session, or people take it away, and as it's been said around the table, it's always time for change is always has its difficult moments, but overall I was really impressed with the report. It was very thorough, and I'm glad we were able to break it down into A, B, C, and D, so thank you.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm fully prepared to support the A, B, and C, but I have a question about D. Now, you said some families actually put out like 6 or 8 bags and they buy the tags and fine. Do you have any way of knowing if that's primarily families with small children?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't really have a way of determining that.
Okay. Well, I would, I'm prepared to not support 4 bags, leave it at 2, but I'd sure like to leave the door open that if a family has a couple of small kids, I mean, diapers are heavy, and rather than see one of our city workers, strain a back trying to pick up a bag that they've crammed more than they should have into, maybe a simple consideration, like the people who go around, it's the same staffers on the 360 trucks primarily. So I think they would get to know the neighborhood, and I think if a family wanted to signal that they're always buying the extra bags because they're trying to keep their bags light, then maybe we'd give them a break, give them some extra bag tags or something like that. Because I hate to penalize small families. But on the other hand, 4 bags is pretty excessive, unless, of course, you've got something like small kids.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the benefits about the clear bags is that they can still be used for the diaper exemption, which we currently offer to large families with young children, where the diapers can be put into a diaper genie bag or into a larger clear bag, and they have never counted towards the limit.
Oh, well, that's fine then, so I'm certainly going to support 2 bags only. We will go to 4. But then I have another question. You said when people take their own garbage to the landfill site, it too will have to be in a clear bag. And I know quite a while ago, I bought one of those bags at Home Depot. Like, I could probably demolish my house and pack the pieces into those bags and still have a few left over. So I've got a lifetime supply of those heavy black bags. But even they won't be acceptable if you're bringing like wood waste and things like that to the landfill?
That's
No big deal, but
through you, Mr. Mayor, that's one of the questions that we got quite frequently. However, they wouldn't be accepted. They would be subject to a surcharge if they came through in all black bags over the 10% limit, similar to what we do with sorted versus non-sorted waste currently.
okay, because it's secure. I mean, if you're carrying rough boards or nails, they're kind of, you're protected if they're in those thick bags. Thank you.
Councillor Samurai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you for the report, gentlemen. Going over the report, reviewing everything, and that I was really quite taken in with the response from the community. The community seemed to reflect the interest level that you're looking for, but I think these are the people that are basically tuned in to the issue. And when I look at the consultations that Peterborough, that you've worked with rather extensively on this, and they had a 8-month communication period. And I know we're going to implement a similar period. I'm just wondering how extensive their plan was, because it seems to imply that they really did get their message and they got it out, they got it right, people bought into it. My concern is we don't have the same media in Peterborough as we do in Cornwall. In fact, local media is diminishing all across the province, all across the country. The second point that I look at with regards to the communication is the consistency of the communication. Because it's just to put one thing out 1 week and then wait 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and say, oh, by the way, here's a follow-up to what we had said. Out of sight, out of mind. The message just isn't getting there. And that leads me to also the observation that as much as you have a soft start in January and then a more of a targeted, here we are with the hard start in April 1st, I think there should be a little bit more of a progressive period so that people will understand just the level of participation that we're looking for from them and the need for them to buy into it and that stuff. So if you could elaborate with regards to the extent of the communications, how much it's going to cost and how is it going to get delivered, and whether or not there's flexibility on the soft start and the hard.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, when we do get to the public consultation phase, there's going to be a strategy that is developed, pending council approval, of course, of the program. So we haven't really gone down the road of developing an implementation strategy or the communication total plan yet. We did in-house, we monitored Peterborough's program for almost the whole duration of their public consultation phase. So we're hoping to mimic much of what they were successful at. And then in-house, we're going to develop our own strategies using what we have available to us in terms of local media and our socials and whatnot.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if there was a question coming. Any further comments? Okay, I'll just provide some quick ones myself. I'm prepared to support this. I've thought about the pros and cons, and I think, a lot of what has been said tonight in favor of this is what I would say. We talk about landfill life, when we talk about the economy of our landfill, I think we value a ton in our landfill at $150 a ton. That might not be current, that might be an old number from last term, but when we talk about the cost of closing a landfill, establishing a new one, or trying to, or then having to truck our garbage elsewhere, there's a lot of factors that come in. When it comes to recyclables, we've seen a huge increase in the value of our recyclables. I know that, well, you know, we get our reports of budget, but I do sign check registers every week or so that show our payments that go to our neighboring municipalities that send us their recycling. We changed our program a few years ago, so it's cost shared, which means they reap the profits like we do, and I can see the increase that they're getting as a result. So there's value there. So whenever anything goes to landfill, we're losing out on that. And when it comes to municipality, we're limited in the revenue sources we have, and recycling is one of them, especially in this climate where it's cheaper to recycle than it is to extract new resources. So things like that really play into this. I understand the privacy concerns, I do. I think, you know, having the screener bag or whatever you want to call it, or screening bag, that works. Frankly, personally, I don't care what's in people's garbage. I don't care if people see what's in my garbage. You know, have at it. It's trash, it's garbage. To me, the garbage itself is valueless, right? So, I mean, that doesn't really concern me. But with that, based on what I have on my screen from the clerk, I was out of the room when this started the debate. I see it was moved by Councillor Good and seconded by Councillor McDonald. Is that correct for this particular section? Okay. Did you want to wrap up, or I think we've debated this enough?
It wasn't a motion.
No? It's the one item, but there is a motion based on that. Yes, understood that, yeah. So we're voting on B or number 2 as it's displayed on my screen. Okay, we all understand what we're voting on? All in favor? All opposed? Motion is carried, thank you. Move on to C. Councillor Good, are you moving that recommendation? Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Gardner? Any debate? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Carried, thank you. Move on to D. Moving that, Councillor Good? All right, seconder, please. Councillor McDonald? Councillor Good?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on a roll with the clear bags. I'll admit, I think like most of my colleagues, when I saw the shift from 2 to 4, it felt really counterintuitive. And this report was lengthy. There was a lot of information. There's actually a few reports in there. And as I got through all of it, I feel like it made more sense to me. And the reality of it is that you're going to make the garbage that you make, the waste that you make, but if you are putting it into the proper stream and diverting it properly, you should not be punished for missing a garbage day. We have people in our community, and we know hoarding is a massive issue in our community, but mental health is such a big factor in my estimation for what could cause somebody to have additional waste. So if you are sick one week, whether that's physical or mental health, maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's a month, and finally you get someone over, or you manage to muster up the ability yourself to get through all of the waste that we all produce, because that's being a human, and actually just living, we produce waste. I think if that person can take all of the waste that they've accumulated over however many weeks that they've been ill and put what's recyclable in the recycling, what's organic in the organics, and what's garbage in the garbage bins, then we should allow them to do that without causing the additional stress of putting another barrier in place. People want convenience, and I actually believe that this program is implemented in a way to make it convenient for people. Your garbage can go in a bag, or it can go right in the bin. That's awesome. And because there's no organics, it's not gonna stink, it's not gonna stick, there's nothing. I mean, organics is what makes things stinky and sticky, so you totally absolve that problem. I'm very, very satisfied actually with the depth of research that went into this with the comparable municipalities. And I know this isn't directly this point right here, but on page, oh no, I missed the page. There's a page with stickers. Where is it? Here we go. Page 116 shows some sticker examples that were used. And I see these are all from Markham. Markham, which if you go to another table just a few pages before this is showing an 82% diversion rate. An 82%, they're the highest one. So I'm glad that you actually used the stickers from the municipality that had the highest diversion rate, because I think we can learn from what they've done. I want a gold star on my bin. I do. But you know what? Some weeks I might not be well enough to put out the garbage. And we are a family of 4. We're not a big family. But you miss 1 week, you've got family visiting, circumstances happen. To give people the peace of mind and the benefit of the doubt to say, as long as you divert and as long as you put your waste in the right stream, we're gonna let you put it out. Because maybe you didn't do any last week and maybe you didn't do any the week before. We don't really know. So I am in favor of this change because I think it is less punitive. I think it gives wiggle room and forgiveness to people who are facing circumstances that are difficult. We've seen great success with the 2-bag, and I don't think most people are going to increase the amount of garbage they produce, whether we make it 2 or 4 or 10. I don't think it actually will change anything. Who this will impact are the people who need it, who are vulnerable, who are in circumstances where they have no choice, and they're trying their best. So I am in favor of the 4-bag limit, not because I want us to make more waste, and I had my own concerns about it before, but because I am empathetic to the needs of people who are vulnerable, and I think this is who that is for. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
How much for a bag tag if I go over the limit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's $1.50 per tag, but you have to purchase them in 10 sheets, so $15 to buy a sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments on this? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Your microphone, please, Councillor McDonald.
So that was a motion to increase it to 4, so that won the day?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Temporary tree protection bylaw, with the recommendation that council receive this report, and that council approve the temporary tree protection bylaw to enact immediate temporary tree protection policies on privately owned land within the boundaries of the city of Cornwall.
Councillor Hebert, are you moving it? Okay, is there a seconder? Okay, Councillor Gardner.
Point of order, Your Worship. Do I not see action recommended that there's some on the previous report, there's an A, B, and C kind of as a follow-up that we haven't voted on? Or am I missing something here? So there was A, B, C, and D, and then there were 3 subsequent recommendations. I'm assuming based that if the B would have been approved, then we're supposed to vote on the second part of B, C, and D, or am I misreading this somehow, or I don't need to be a stickler on this, but.
So based on what I have here, I mean, this item started when I wasn't in the room, but my understanding was you split up A, B, C, and D to vote on.
Yes, but
we
if,
voted
and maybe
on
it's
this.
because I've got the old one, but on mine, there's a follow-up one, and maybe the paper copy, or maybe the merged copy. Mr. Fothrop, do you want to?
Mr. Fothrop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if the recommendations are as per the report, I think those were the previous recommendations from
Okay.
the report that was attached, so.
Fair enough. Sorry, Your Worship, I just wanted to make sure I knew it.
Oh, I see where you're looking at. So that's the report that came to us last year. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so we're on the tree canopy. There's a motion. Councilor Hebert, you moved it. Do you want to start debate, or?
I guess I'm really hoping there's not much debate on this one. I think it's a no-brainer. We have been talking about this for a very long time, and so just really happy to see that we have an opportunity to move this forward, temporary or not. You know, at least we can see some things happening immediately. So
Thank you.
that's it.
Councilor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions. this policy, or if that's what we want to call it, no, this references a bylaw, which is down further in the bylaws. Can I ask questions about that bylaw now, or is it better?
You may ask them now, yes.
Okay. So just looking at the bylaw that relates to this particular item, I noticed that under 4.1A, it says that this does not apply to the city. Can I just get clarification on that?
Mr. Fothrop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, so that's if the city's wants, typically it would be for a capital works project or an infrastructure improvement. Basically, it wouldn't apply to the city if the city had work to do.
So we're not going to fine ourselves if we need to remove some trees. I assume we will exercise caution with those activities.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we follow all legislative requirements, including completing environmental studies.
Perfect. And for those following, I think it's page 125 or in or around there. So 4.1 D and E, these are the exceptions, basically. So condition of site approval or existing development permit. And so my question is, basically those that have already been approved for development are exempted from this bylaw. Am I understanding that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the intent is that anybody that has received site plan control approval
Okay.
or a subdivision agreement would be exempt.
Now, do you have any estimate of the anticipated loss for those that have already gone through the site control agreement or development approval?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't. However, if they were subject to recent site plan control or recent subdivision agreement processes, they would have had to have completed environmental impact studies. The primary, I guess, intent and with the bylaw is to address large properties that have not gone through the development process yet and have not been subject to any of the administrative control processes and planning control processes in place and are already proceeding with tree removal.
Okay. We approved development phases for a number of new developments at our first meeting of the new year. And I'm just curious, and I intended to bring it up there, but as happens late at night, sometimes we just approve and go, wait, what happened? Now, for those developments that we approved in January, were those plots of land already clear-cut and ready for development, or are those forested, or are some of them forested plots of land that we approved development on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't recall which specific developments that we're discussing, but for instance, if a development has a site plan agreement or a subdivision agreement, they have already submitted the required environmental studies and would have approval to proceed with construction. Anything receiving draft plan that has received draft plan approval would still need to go through the subdivision approval process, which would require environmental studies be completed, and they would not be able to clear any trees until an agreement is executed.
Thank you for that information. I appreciate that. I also just wanted to note here 6.1 and 6.3, $100,000 fines. I believe it's up to $100,000. And then an additional $100,000 I put for what? I'm not sure. And may be ordered to replant. So I'm actually very happy because I think that this gives it something to enforce. It's not just a bylaw in writing and in hopes and dreams and wishes. It has real implications. So thank you. I fully support this, and I am very, very happy to see it come back to council.
Councillor McIntosh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Michael, if I've bought 2 acres of land, I'm a developer, but I haven't filed anything yet, I'm just, this applies?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it would. Until you have a development agreement in place, either a site plan or a subdivision agreement, until you've gone through the planning application process and completed all the required studies, you can't remove a tree. You can't clear cut. You could proceed with construction once all those planning approvals are in place and the required documentation has been submitted.
Okay, so now when I'm going through the approvals, Somebody's saying you can't cut over there, you can't cut this tree, you can't cut that tree.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's possible after an environmental impact study has been completed, if they've identified any specific species at risk, such as a butternut tree, or often it is trees can only be removed during a certain period of time if there's a large presence of bats, those types of restrictions. However, what we're wanting to ensure is that the opportunity for those studies to be completed is there.
Yeah, the reason Carrie Lynn might remember this, but at the Raisin region, this came up subject, and we were told that you cannot tell the developer he can't, it's his property. Now, the word managing was used, and that's, you just described this certain species of trees can't be cut, but the impression I was left with was that you can't tell the developer, no, you're not doing, sorry, it's maybe your property, but we're telling you you can't develop.
There's a lot of work in that space now across Ontario. The former municipality, which I was familiar with, we had a tree protection bylaw, and we established the provisions relating to that for existing infill development and new greenfield development. I think what you see in front of you is a tree protection temporary, but the engagement for a true tree protection bylaw and the range of implications for existing homeowners, future development, infill, front yard, rear yard, all the types of conditions you could see would be considered in the more permanent aspect. This is meant to capture the feedback we've received from the community and the concerns the team has and council has had relating to just massive tree cutting without the right reviews and processes in place.
I guess we got to be careful there. I think I'm not going to name where it is, but we all know two massive tree cutting operations in the last 8 months. They did that quite legally, didn't they?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing technically preventing them from proceeding. There would be nothing technically that they would be breaking unless a bylaw was in place.
Then those individuals, those companies aren't going to have any problem getting building permits and subdivision, all the steps they have to go through?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they would be required to go through the normal planning process based off of what is currently there.
Has you ever taken an inventory how much we have left that could be developed that's actually a mini forest or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't done it recently. We completed a tree canopy study a few years ago. We're looking at possibly updating that, but I don't have current.
Because I'm thinking there's tree canopy, like I'm thinking on Vincent Massey, just past Power Dam, nobody could develop that property. It's, it's waterlogged and major drainage problems. So I'm just wondering how much we got left that isn't, have they gotten all the clear cutting done that they need for the next 10 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
I know you can't answer
I
that.
can't answer.
I'm just throwing it out there. Thanks.
Councilor Gardner next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Fothrop, for the report. When we're talking about clear cutting, we're talking about carbon being taken out of the air by the trees. We're talking about cooling in the area where there are trees in the middle of the summer. But more importantly than that, I think, is the small animal displacement which happens. Rabbits, foxes, turtles, you name the small animals. They have no choice but to move into the inside of the city to be covered by homes, by shade with small trees, and their habitat is gone. So I'm so glad to see this come forward because I watched turtles getting crushed on Power Dam Drive day after day in the spring and in the summer. I saw people stop their cars and try and stop the traffic from going through there and crushing small animals. So thank you for that, Mr. Fothrop. I appreciate that. Believe me, it's been a long time coming.
Councilor Gunjo.
Mr. Mayor, I'm very much in favor of this bylaw. I'm very pleased that we are finally going to act to protect the appearance of our community. I deeply deplore that we did not act a few years ago when whole area of trees were being cut down for lumberings within our community. What we are hearing from the city back then was that it was complicated and that nothing could be done. This bylaw shows that we are now standing up as a community. I remember a few weeks ago, I was supporting a motion to increase the budget allowed to planting trees. And I had a question that popped in my mind about trees that I would like to ask maybe to Mr. Fatrop. The amount of money, the budget that we are allowed to plant tree, what is the equivalent in terms of tree? Can we have a number, how much trees it can?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, offhand, it's 800 new, and I think 1,300 overall.
1,300
overall.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a good news, but it's very small. I think, as my colleague just said, the city of Cornwall trees, canopy is a disaster right now. We are cutting trees. It's the best way to protect our environment. It's the best way to capture carbon. It's the best way to protect the flora, to protect the animals. So I think, as a council, we should try and make the best possible to increase or to protect our canopy. So this is a good news to me, and I'm going to support anything that goes through this direction. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further comments? Okay. Councilor Huber, did you want to wrap up, or are you good? Okay, perfect. So all clear what we're voting on. It's on the screen. I'll vote. All in favor? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
There are no inquiries, Mr. Mayor. Reports from committees?
Any reports from committees? Oh, Councilor Gunjo?
Mr. Mayor, it's not about committees, but can I share it here?
Yes.
I know that next 21st February, we're gonna have lady coming from the provincial government to give courses to the member of our community about how to apply for funding. This was made through the contact that I share with the CEO, and I'm very happy to see that and to hear that this project was finally concrete, and I'm pretty convinced that it's going to support a lot of our community organizations that are struggling about finding money. So I urge and I beg all our organism to attend to this meeting that will be held on, I think it's, you can help me, Mr. CEO, it's going to be on the Civic Complex facility, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Microphone, please, Mr. CEO.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. Councilor, I apologize, I can pull it up. I don't have the details, I wouldn't want to mislead.
Oh, okay, thank you very much, but that's a good news that I wanted to share. Through Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to start a microphone jar like a swear jar. Councilor McDonald first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to let people know that this Saturday at Cornwall Square upstairs, there will be a display by Cornwall, Heritage Cornwall, Patrimoine Cornwall. A number of historical groups will be presenting. Public welcome.
Thank you. Mr. C, you have that information?
Yes, I do have the information, and thank you, Counselor, for that. So yes, the Community Funding 101 is called. It's a grant writing tips and tricks, and it's happening February 21st, so next week. The doors open at 6 p.m. The start is at 6:30, and it's at the Cornwall Civic Complex, Sanombi. And it's free.
Thank you. Further reports from committees? Councillor McIntosh.
Really a report, it's a comment on things. After the day after the budget, with much fear and trepidation, I ventured into Tim Hortons for the coffee ground. Sat there, and not one person mentioned the budget. Great. Anyway, I want to compliment Mr. Mayor on the way he handled it. I sent him an email that I thought he did a great job. We cut off when we're supposed to cut off, so we go home. The old days we used to go on 2 hours, 3 hours. One year we set the budget at 5 minutes to midnight. So anyway, this one went very smoothly.
Thank you, Councillor McIntosh. It's a team effort, so council and administration deserve all the credit. Sorry, it's getting late. Any further reports from committees? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk.
We have one resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I do think there is a report, and we're right into the meeting. It's rare that I get an opportunity, but it's the mayor's birthday this evening, so it's rare that I get an opportunity to trump him, but on this case, I will. So just for everyone, the mayor is working on his birthday.
It's out of order. Thank you. Although we do have an in-camera to get to, so you know. Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add that this weekend coming up is the Family Day weekend, and at the Aquatic Center and Benson Center and probably other spots around town, there are activities where kids are welcome, families are welcome to come. I think they're probably free, are they? Mr.
There's
Crawford?
pancakes there too, and I'll be there with bells on. I've been waiting for pancakes for a while.
Thank you.
Free ones.
Resolution, Mr. Mayor?
Please, Madam Clerk.
Whereas the City of Cornwall is desirous of ensuring equity, transparency, efficiency, and sustainability in all its activities, and whereas Council establishes policies pertaining to governance, and whereas the City of Cornwall has many contacts with outside agencies and community partners, and whereas the City of Cornwall values demonstrated environmental, social, and governance policies and practices of external partners, and whereas the City of Cornwall is desirous of adopting a consistent approach to external advertising for programs funded by the City of Cornwall. Now therefore be it resolved that administration review all funding agreements with external parties to ensure equity, transparency, efficiency, and sustainability. Establish policies pertaining to governance and oversight of external parties, emphasizing accountability and alignment with city objectives. Review existing contracts and MOUs to determine any financial or legal implications of discontinuing the partnership. Consider demonstrating environmental, social, and governance policies and practices of external partners, and ensuring external advertising for programs funded by the City of Cornwall prominently features the city logo, ensuring clear identification of municipal support. Now therefore be it further resolved that administration report back to council at a future regular meeting of council.
Councillor Good.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not 100% sure how to approach this as a resolution. So is this because it was presented at our budget meeting and?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, correct. Usually we would treat it as an inquiry, but because it was read before, we consider that to be a notice of motion. We put the public on notice, and now is the resolution which is to be debated this evening.
Now, before I begin, should we have a seconder?
I
Or
believe the seconder was Councillor Hebert.
Oh, okay.
She
It could-
declared a conflict.
She declared a
so-
conflict.
That's true.
Councillor Hollingsworth? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Good?
Great. So as was mentioned, this motion came about as a result of our budget deliberations. We received quite a bit of information, and it was apparent through some of the funding agreements that there were inconsistencies with the agreements that we had with a number of organizations. Now, the purpose of this is really to empower our senior team to conduct a review of all of the funding agreements that we have with external parties to ensure consistency, oversight, and that they are aligned with our strategic priorities. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
Yeah, I supported originally, Your Worship. I think what we could do or should do almost is operate off a template where we have a number of clauses. This is kind of how we do our business. And currently, I don't get a sense that that's how we've operated, that we sort of negotiate kind of each one separately, and there may or may not be some inconsistencies. So the motion ultimately is to kind of give administration the opportunity with the direction from council to go and take a look at these MOUs and say, okay, they're all in order, or maybe they're not. And perhaps these are some things that we need to include on all of our MOUs moving forward. So it's really just about trying to nail it down a little bit for future MOUs in particular, and to kind of clean them up, the current ones, to make sure that the city's interests are protected. Thank you.
Further comments? Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, thank you. Carried, sorry, thank you. Perhaps we could, we'll prepare to go in camera, and we'll invite Councillor Hebert back.
So would you like to wait for Councillor Hebert to
We
return?
can start the process because we're going to do a quick 5-minute recess
So-
as we switch over.
Motion to move into closed meeting to address matters pertaining to Section 239(2) and 3.1 of the Municipal Act. A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter is being considered. Item 1, encampment update report. It meets the criteria of the security of the property of the municipality or local board. Item 2, winter control report, labor relations or employee negotiations. And item 3, negotiation update for labor relations or employee negotiations, Mr. Mayor.
Motion? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Carried, thank you. So we'll just take a quick 5 minutes to switch over. and take care.
Nothing is ever sure.